Chapter 2256. Yi Xian was speechless. Could this fellow have cultivated to transcend time so quickly because he wanted to eat meat? Needless to say, Yi Xian was quite shocked at this moment. Transcend time. Xianxia had actually used such a short period of time to reach transcend time. That wasn't just an ordinary level of terrifying. It wasn't normal. Meanwhile, primeval Yuan appeared here. He glanced at Xianxia and said softly, "His heart is very simple. The simpler it is, the faster his cultivation will be." Yi Xian fell silent. At this moment, he recalled something Qin Guan had once said. There are no obstacles to cultivation. It's the human heart that is too complicated and has too many thoughts. That's why there are obstacles to cultivation. Obviously, Tianqi's heart was very simple and pure. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He took out a roasted leg of lamb and handed it to Xianxia. Xianxia was overjoyed and took a bite. Meanwhile, primeval Yuan suddenly said, "All of you should speed up as well. There are only 2 more days left." Yi Xian nodded. The inheritances continued. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground while the countless inheritances of the primeval race flashed through his mind. Time was the passing of time. Was it the past? Strictly speaking, it was. The river of time was the product of the accumulation of time over a long period of time. Was it difficult to transcend time? Of course it was. Because one had to gain complete control of the river of time before they could transcend time. Fortunately, there were many cultivation techniques within those inheritances. These ancient cultivation techniques could allow them to grasp the river of time quickly. At this moment, Yi Xian sighed with emotion. Independent cultivators couldn't compare to such extraordinary powers at all. Such extraordinary powers had their own inheritances. Many realms were as difficult as ascending to the heavens in the outside world, but they had extremely detailed cultivation techniques here. It was so detailed that it made one's scalp go numb. Just like the old saying, what you need to spend your entire life pondering and pursuing is something others are born with. There was no comparison at all. Yi Xian shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He started to focus on controlling the river of time. As he studied the river of time, a thought suddenly arose in Yi Xian's mind. Why transcend time? Why couldn't it fuse with time? Without detachment, I am both for the years. Thinking of this, Yi Xian decided to give it a try. But soon, Yi Xian was a little depressed. It was because he discovered that he couldn't merge with the river of time at all. The other party didn't care about him at all. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly missed the green profound sword. If it was the green profound sword, it would definitely fuse with him. However, Yi Xian did not intend to give up. After a short moment of silence, Yi Xian suddenly said, "River of time, I know you're intelligent. Since you're intelligent, can we talk?" No response. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "According to my understanding, even though you're time, you're not absolutely safe. There are countless great experts in this world that can destroy you, right?" There was still no response. Yi Xian continued, "You should have met my younger sister, right? Time, if you fuse with me, your fate will be tied to mine. As long as I don't die, no one can destroy you. In other words, if you choose to fuse with me, my backer will be your backer." Still no response. Yi Xian smiled slightly. "Since you're unwilling, then forget it." Before he could finish speaking, Yi Xian suddenly discovered that the river of time around him suddenly trembled. In the next moment, the river of time actually took the initiative to fuse with him. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian was overjoyed. Damn it! It actually worked. Actually, he had just wanted to fool it casually, but he hadn't expected it to actually succeed. Life was really full of surprises. Wonderful. Yi Xian hurriedly took the initiative to fuse with the river of time. When he took the initiative to fuse with the river of time, Yi Xian was shocked to the extreme. He was like a tiny fish, and the river of time was like a vast ocean. Only when he entered the ocean did he realize how tiny he was compared to the river of time. Transcend time? Yi Xian suddenly discovered a problem. The so-called transcending time didn't mean surpassing the flow of time. It meant that the other party wasn't bound by the flow of time. In front of the river of time, the other party was still very tiny. This was because the power of time was everywhere. Transcending was not surpassing it. Just like a fish in the sea, if it left the sea, it could also be said that it had transcended the sea, but it couldn't be said that it was more amazing than the sea. Thinking of this, Yi Xian suddenly became enlightened. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. He began to earnestly fuse with the river of time. Like this, the third day passed. In the grand hall, Dao Ling and Shirtian suddenly opened their eyes at the same time. A terrifying aura erupted from their bodies, but this aura was instantly retracted by the two. The two looked at each other and then laughed. Transcending time. With the help of the primal god race ancestors, they had directly transcended time. As if thinking of something, the two turned to look at Yi Xian not too far away. At this time, Yi Xian was still quietly sitting, like an old monk in meditation. Both of them frowned. He still hasn't broken through? Right at this moment, Primeval Yuan suddenly said, "How do the two of you feel now?" Dao Ling grinned, "I feel like I'm invincible." Primeval Yuan shook his head and smiled, "It's very normal. When I transcended time for the first time, I was very arrogant as well." Dao Ling said in a low voice, "Senior, my brother Yi." Primeval Yuan glanced at Yi Xian and fell silent. Dao Ling and Shirtian exchanged glances, and they were both slightly puzzled. Why hasn't he broken through? Right at this moment, Primeval Yuan suddenly said, "Young Master Yi, time's up." Yi Xian didn't reply. Primeval Yuan's expression froze. This little fellow isn't trying to act shamelessly, right? Dao Ling hesitated for a moment and said, "Senior, he might be at a critical moment. Can you give him a little more time?" Primeval Yuan was about to speak when a voice suddenly resounded from outside, "Patriarch Primeval, 3 days are up." Primeval Yuan fell silent. "Time's up." Primeval Yuan gazed at Yi Xian, but Yi Xian still didn't reply. Dao Ling intended to say something when Shirtian spoke abruptly, "Senior, the 3 of us brothers will go stop them and allow Brother Yi to stay here and continue cultivating. What do you think?" Primeval Yuan fell silent. Shirtian spoke abruptly, "We'll take Yi Xian out." As he spoke, he bowed deeply to Primeval Yuan. "We 4 brothers will definitely remember what the primeval race has done for us today. If the primeval race needs anything in the future, we 4 brothers will definitely do our best to help. Senior, we'll meet again." As soon as he finished speaking, he took Yi Xian with him and left. Dao Ling bowed slightly, and then he turned around and left as well. Tian Qi glanced at Primeval Yuan, and then he withdrew a piece of roasted meat. He stuffed it into Primeval Yuan's hand, and then he turned around and ran. Primeval Yuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he gazed at the roasted meat in his hand. The primeval god tree spoke in a low voice, "Patriarch." Primeval Yuan said softly, "We can only help them this much. If we continue to help, we'll have to face the immortal mausoleum head-on. If it was in the past, even if we have to face the immortal mausoleum head-on, I wouldn't hesitate. But now..." As he spoke, he shook his head, "We've already declined. If we really face the immortal mausoleum head-on, us old fellows don't matter, but what about our clansmen who are hiding in the dark?" As he spoke, he looked into the distance and said softly, "Our abilities are limited. Even if we have good karma, we have to stop." The primeval god tree nodded, "I understand." As if he thought of something, he suddenly looked outside. "Then what about young Master Yi?" After a long silence, Primeval Yuan said, "I'm also very puzzled." As he spoke, he looked outside. "I hope they can get through this. Otherwise, our investment will be wasted." Outside. The moment Dao Ling, Shirtian, and Tian Qi brought Yi Xian out, they were locked onto by 3 terrifying auras. It was Master Yun, Culpa Lord, and Supreme Mist. Supreme Mist looked at Dao Ling and the other 2 with a calm expression. The Culpa Lord's gaze fell on Yi Xian with an unfriendly expression. Supreme Mist sized up Dao Ling and the other 2. In the next moment, a cold light flashed in his eyes. "Transcend time." Hearing this, Master Yun and the Culpa Lord's expressions instantly turned ugly. These 3 actually transcended time in such a short period of time? Supreme Mist looked at the primeval god palace in the distance and her expression was terrifyingly gloomy. She naturally knew that the reason these people could transcend time in such a short period of time was because of the primeval god race. Otherwise, Yi Xian and the others definitely couldn't transcend time in such a short period of time. At this moment, the Culpa Lord suddenly pointed at Yi Xian in the distance and said, "He doesn't seem to have broken through." Supreme Mist retracted her gaze and looked at Yi Xian in the distance. She frowned. "He hasn't broken through." Below, Dao Ling suddenly smiled. "Everyone, can we talk?" Supreme Mist looked at Dao Ling. "Talk about what?" Dao Ling smiled. "What do you think of the four of us?" Supreme Mist's expression was calm. "What do you want to say?" Dao Ling said seriously, "Don't you think we are very outstanding? Forgive me for being blunt, but there are no more outstanding geniuses and monsters than us four brothers. You guys are targeting us. If we take revenge on you in the future when we grow up, won't you guys be in trouble?" Supreme Mist nodded. "It will indeed be troublesome." Dao Ling hurriedly said, "So, why are you guys targeting us? Now, if you apologize to us and compensate us with something, the grudge between us will be over. What do you think?" Supreme Mist looked at Dao Ling. "Are you trying to trick me?" "Dao Ling," Supreme Mist said again, "you're right. If you guys really grow up, you can indeed bring us a lot of trouble. So, we have to kill you before you guys grow up." As she said this, she looked at Dao Ling. "Thank you for your reminder." As her voice fell, Master Yun, who was beside her, dashed out. At the side, Dao Ling's expression froze. Shirtian sighed softly. "You idiot. If you don't have a brain like Brother Yi, don't try to trick us." Dao Ling. 7017K. Chapter 2257. At the instant that Master Yun charged over, a vicious look flashed through Tianqi's eyes. In the next moment he charged at Master Yun. Bang! An explosion resounded in the sky, and then both Master Yun and Tianqi retreated explosively at the same time. The two of them retreated several tens of thousands of feet away. After Master Yun stopped moving, he gazed at Tianqi with a wisp of a solemn expression in his eyes, and he was shocked. What a terrifying physical strength. Venerable Mist suddenly said, "He's a demon beast. Watch out." Master Yun nodded slightly, and then he vanished on the spot. This space suddenly split apart. A wisp of ferocity flashed through Tianqi's eyes, and then he clenched his right fist and punched forward. Rumble! A huge explosion resounded, and then the heavens and the earth were blasted apart. This time, Tianqi retreated by almost 300 kilometers, and he just stopped when the space behind him collapsed into pieces. Master Yun gazed at Tianqi with a calm expression. Again! As soon as he finished speaking, he charged at Tianqi. Tianqi clenched his right fist tightly, and then he shot into the sky and smashed against Master Yun. He was going head-on against him. On the other side, Dao Ling glanced at Venerable Mist and the Tribulation Lord, and then he said, "Brother Tian, who do you choose?" Shirtian immediately pointed at the Tribulation Lord. Dao Ling's face froze. Everyone could discern that Venerable Mist was even more terrifying. Shirtian glanced at Yi Xian, who was still meditating in the distance, and then he said, "That Tribulation Lord's gaze has been fixed on Brother Yi. Obviously he intends to kill Brother Yi. Be careful." Dao Ling nodded, and then he gazed at Venerable Mist. "Do you want to fight me? If you don't want to fight me, you can fight my brother Tian." Shirtian was speechless. Venerable Mist stared at Dao Ling. "I want to fight you." Dao Ling was puzzled. "Why?" Venerable Mist's expression was calm. "I hate flashy people. So, I want to beat you to death." As she spoke, she suddenly vanished on the spot. Dao Ling's pupils constricted, and then he pressed his palms together. In an instant, an all-manifestation Dharma body that was over 30 kilometers long appeared behind him. He didn't dare act carelessly or underestimate such a terrifying Venerable Mist. Dao Ling suddenly roared, "Die!" As soon as he finished speaking, he slammed his right palm down. Boom! Behind him, the Dharma body, which was tens of thousands of meters tall, suddenly slammed its palm down. Boom! Wherever the giant palm passed, the space would burn and be annihilated. Revered Mist watched the palm strike with a calm expression. She flicked her sleeve. Boom. The enormous palm was directly shattered. At the same time, Dao Ling retreated explosively for over 100 kilometers, and the all-creation Dharma body behind him had already vanished. Dao Ling was a little confused. Damn it. I was beaten up right after transcending time. Dao Ling looked at Venerable Mist in the distance. Venerable Mist's expression was calm. A Dharma body of all creations. Why are you still playing with such a low-level thing? How could you entrust your power to the Dharmakaya? What are you thinking? Dao Ling took a deep look at Supreme Mist, then turned to look at Shirtian. Shirtian's eyelid twitched. Don't look at me. I want to follow Lord Robber. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged towards the Tribulation Lord. Dao Ling's expression froze. The Culpa Lord's face remained emotionless when he saw Shirtian charge over, but his gaze was terrifyingly icy cold. Actually, he wasn't much weaker than Supreme Mist and Master Yun in the past. The reason why he was so weak now was because Qin Guan had destroyed his myriad calamity body. When he thought of this, he felt his heart ache. All calamity body. All calamity body. He had cultivated for tens of thousands of years to achieve it. Yet that woman had beaten him into nothingness. When he thought of that woman, his scalp went numb. The Culpa Lord didn't think too much about it and charged toward Shirtian. In an instant, countless tribulation lightning appeared in the surroundings. Shirtian didn't dare to be careless when facing the Culpa Lord. In the battle, the one who suffered the most was Dao Ling. When he fought against Supreme Mist, he was simply taking a beating. At this moment, he didn't even have the strength to fight back. He could only passively take a beating. Tianqi was also being suppressed by Master Yun. Although Tianqi's body was extremely terrifying, his combat style was too simple. He was at a disadvantage when facing an expert of Master Yun's level. However, Master Yun couldn't do anything to Tianqi for the time being, because Tianqi's body was too terrifying. In particular, he still had the primal god armor that the primal god race had given him. When Shirtian fought with the Culpa Lord, he was also suppressed by the Culpa Lord. After all, he had just transcended time and couldn't compare with a powerhouse of the Culpa Lord's level. And the one who suffered the most was Dao Ling. He was simply being beaten up. In the distance, in the Grand Hall, the Primal God Tree said softly, "They aren't a match for Supreme Mist's group of 3. Primal Yuan was silent. The Primal God Tree said in a low voice, "In at most a quarter of an hour, Dao Ling will be killed by Supreme Mist. Once Dao Ling is killed, then neither Shirtian nor Tianqi will live." Primal Yuan looked at Yi Xian, who was still sitting in the distance. It was unknown what he was thinking. The Primal God Tree shook its head. Even if Yi Xian makes a breakthrough now, it is meaningless. Even if the 4 of them join forces, they still won't be a match for Supreme Mist's group of 3. After a moment of silence, Primal Yuan said softly, "That will depend on their own good fortune." The Primal God Tree said in a low voice, "Are we really not going to help?" Primal Yuan smiled bitterly. "What can we do to help? If we help, it means that we will be waging war against the Immortal Mausoleum. How can the current us resist the Immortal Mausoleum?" The Primal God Tree sighed. The current Primal God race indeed didn't have the ability to contend with the Immortal Mausoleum. At this moment, Primal Yuan looked up at the distant horizon and said softly, "It might be over." Bang! In the distant starry skies, the starry skies suddenly exploded. In the next moment, a figure frantically retreated. It was Dao Ling. Dao Ling had retreated hundreds of thousands of feet. After Dao Ling stopped, a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. In the distance, Supreme Mist looked at Dao Ling with a calm expression. "You don't seem to be much." Dao Ling wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He looked at the distant Supreme Mist and slowly closed his eyes. He opened his hands and in the next moment, a divine stone appeared between his eyebrows. Primal God Stone. Suddenly, the space around Dao Ling trembled. Dao Ling slowly clenched his right hand. In the next moment, he suddenly soared into the sky. In an instant, the starry skies boiled. With the help of the Primal God Stone, a Wanxiang avatar that was hundreds of thousands of feet long appeared behind him. The moment this Wanxiang avatar appeared, a terrifying pressure instantly swept across the entire starry skies. Then, the starry skies within a radius of millions of miles trembled violently as if there was an earthquake. It was incomparably terrifying. In the distance, Supreme Mist looked at Dao Ling with a calm expression. The source of power comes from within, not from outside. Dao Ling suddenly turned his head and looked at Yi Xian, who was sitting quietly below. He said in a trembling voice, "Brother Yi, how much longer do you need? Give me a definite answer." Yi Xian was silent. Dao Ling's expression froze. He didn't say anything else. He suddenly leaped up and directly fused with the Wanxiang avatar behind him. Boom! In an instant, the Wanxiang avatar violently trembled. In an instant, a terrifying aura directly locked onto Supreme Mist in the distance. Supreme Mist frowned slightly. At this moment, she finally felt a little dangerous. Supreme Mist stared at Dao Ling. "You're overexerting yourself." In the starry skies, Dao Ling took a deep breath. He was indeed overexerting himself. He had no choice but to do so. If he didn't do so, he wouldn't be a match for Supreme Mist at all. He had to buy some time for Yi Xian. Dao Ling collected his thoughts. He looked at Supreme Mist in the distance and a ferocious glint flashed in his eyes. In the next moment he directly disappeared on the spot. Boom! The Wanxiang avatar that was hundreds of thousands of feet long swept across the starry skies and directly collided with Supreme Mist. The powerful force seemed to be able to crush this part of the universe. It was extremely terrifying. In the distance, Supreme Mist squinted her eyes. She suddenly opened her right hand and gently swept it forward. Pissed! The space-time suddenly split open. A black light suddenly shot into the sky and met the Wanxiang avatar. Rumble! In the blink of an eye, the ray of black light was obliterated, and the enormous all-elephant's Dharma body trembled violently before it exploded into pieces. A strand of terrifying energy suddenly erupted from the battlefield. Rumble! Supreme Mist retreated explosively for thousands of feet while Dao Ling retreated for hundreds of thousands of feet. As soon as he stopped, he spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. He was extremely weak. In the distance, Supreme Mist glanced at Dao Ling with a trace of seriousness in her eyes. Needless to say, the person before her was indeed monstrous. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible for him to challenge her at a higher level. After all, she, Supreme Mist, was once a monstrous person. Challenging others at a higher level was a common occurrence. How could others challenge her at a higher level? How difficult would that be? However, this Dao Ling before her could fight her. In the distance, Dao Ling wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and then grinned. One more time. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly leaped up. In the starry skies, he suddenly put his palms together. In an instant, hundreds of illusory figures appeared behind him. He suddenly slammed his palms down, and dozens of illusory figures slammed down simultaneously. In the distance, Supreme Mist was expressionless. She suddenly flicked her sleeves. With this movement, the entire starry skies seemed to be lifted up. Rumble! In an instant, a terrifying power swept through the starry skies. Dao Ling was directly thrown hundreds of thousands of feet away by this terrifying power. As soon as he stopped, his physical body was immediately destroyed. Not only that, but his soul also became extremely illusory. That strike just now almost directly obliterated his soul. Dao Ling turned his head and looked into the distance. At that moment, Tianqi and Shitian were already being suppressed. Dao Ling then looked at Yi Xian, who was sitting quietly in the distance. He said softly, "Brother Yi, if you still don't wake up, we can only be brothers in our next lives." In the distance, Supreme Mist was expressionless. Even if he wakes up now, what can he do? As she spoke, she slowly clenched her right hand. A terrifying power suddenly condensed in her right hand. Dao Ling took a deep breath and said softly, "Brother Yi, tell me honestly, are you already awake?" Yi Xian did not reply. Dao Ling said with a trembling voice, "Brother Yi, let's not joke around. Hurry up and get up. If you still don't get up, we'll all be killed." Yi Xian still did not reply. Dao Ling still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly stood up. Seeing this, Dao Ling was overjoyed. Brother Yi. Yi Xian glanced at the horizon and said softly, I understand. After that he turned and left. Dao Ling was stunned. Then he said, Brother Yi, where are you going? Yi Xian did not even turn his head. I'm going to cultivate in seclusion. Brother Dao Ling, help me hold them off for another 3 days. 3 days later, I'll come back and find you. After he finished speaking, he had already disappeared. Dao Ling's face instantly turned pale. 3 days later, come back and collect my corpse. P.S. Those with tickets, please give me a nod. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2258. Did he really leave? Seeing Yi Xian disappear, Dao Ling was dumbfounded as if he was struck by lightning. From afar, Venerable Mist sneered, This is the person you want to protect with your life? As she said that, her pupils suddenly contracted. She turned around and blocked with her arm. Boom! A wave of sword light suddenly erupted from her arm. Kaboom! Venerable Mist retreated tens of thousands of feet away. As soon as she stopped, a shadow suddenly appeared. It wasn't Yi Xian, but Dao Ling who was beside her. A fist flew towards Venerable Mist's face. Venerable Mist's eyes flashed with hostility. She flicked her sleeves. Kaboom! In front of her, time and space collapsed and was destroyed. At that moment, a sword ray appeared behind her without any warning. Venerable Mist's body suddenly shook and she appeared tens of thousands of feet away. A sword slashed through the air. After Venerable Mist stopped, she lifted her head and looked at Yi Xian who was tens of thousands of feet away. Sneak attack? From afar, Yi Xian smiled faintly. Yes. Venerable Mist looked at Yi Xian. You are a swordsman. Don't you think it's shameful to do this? Yi Xian asked back, You have such a high realm, but you bully us. Don't you think it's shameful? Venerable Mist smiled faintly. You have a glib tongue. As soon as she said that, she suddenly pointed at Yi Xian from afar. Boom! A fingerprint suddenly swept across the field and hit Yi Xian. From afar, Yi Xian unsheathed his sword and slashed. Kaboom! The fingerprint shattered immediately. Seeing that, Venerable Mist frowned slightly. You haven't transcended time. Yi Xian smiled faintly. Transcended time? Only ordinary people like you would cultivate realms. I, Yi Xian, don't cultivate realms, understand? Venerable Mist looked at Yi Xian. Don't cultivate realms? Are you kidding me? Yi Xian was just about to speak when Shirtian suddenly said from the side, Brother Yi, let's not chat for now. Can you deal with that woman first, and then come back to help? Yi Xian glanced at Shirtian. At this moment, Shirtian was being suppressed by the Tribulation Lord, and many parts of Shirtian's body had been charred by lightning. He was in a rather miserable state. Only Tianqi was slightly better. His physical body was simply too terrifying. Even though Yunshi was suppressing him, he was unable to do anything to him. Yi Xian retracted his gaze and looked at Venerable Mist in the distance. Venerable Mist smiled and said, He's right. If you want to save them, you have to get rid of me first. Yi Xian suddenly turned his head to look at Dao Ling, who was next to him. What are you looking at? Go and heal your wounds first. Dao Ling was stunned for a moment before he hurriedly nodded. All right, Brother Yi, you can do it. With that, he turned around and vanished into the distance. Yi Xian looked at Supreme Mist in silence. Kill this woman? That wasn't very realistic. Even though he'd fused completely with the River of Time, he hadn't learned how to fully control it. So, he was only barely able to resist this woman. But if this continued, then Shirtian and Tianqi would be in danger. Risking his life? If risking his life was of any use, then he would definitely do so. But the problem was that he couldn't kill this woman even if he risked his life. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he opened his palm. The Dark Heaven token appeared in his hand, and he activated it. In the next moment, the masked old man appeared in front of him. The masked old man was instantly shocked when he saw Supreme Mist and the others. He gazed at Yi Xian and spoke with a trembling voice, Young Master Yi. Yi Xian grinned. Don't be nervous. I didn't ask you to come and help me fight. The masked old man was still very nervous. He'd never really believed Yi Xian's words. Yi Xian said, "Issue a warrant for my arrest. I'll give you 1,000,000 universe veins if you're able to kill this woman in front of me." The masked old man hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "Young Master Yi, I can issue this warrant for you. But the condition is that you really have 1,000,000 universe veins." As he spoke, he paused for a moment and continued, "You have to. Otherwise, it'll affect my immortal treasure pavilion greatly." Yi Xian smiled, "You think I don't have it?" The masked old man hurriedly shook his head. "I absolutely didn't mean that. It's just a rule." Yi Xian tapped with his finger, and a spatial ring descended to the masked old man. There were 1,000,000 universe veins within the spatial ring. After the masked old man put the spatial ring away, he said, "Young Master Yi, wait a moment." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and vanished. In the distance, Supreme Mist laughed with ridicule. 1,000,000 universe veins? Kill me? Yi Xian, I really suspect that there's something wrong with your head. Yi Xian's expression was calm. Meanwhile, the masked old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and he said in a low voice, "Young Master Yi, someone contacted me. I need at least 3,000,000 universe veins to kill this woman." 3,000,000. Yi Xian frowned. He didn't think too much about it, and he just turned around to look at Dao Ling and Shirtian. "Hand over the universe veins." Shirtian and Dao Ling didn't hesitate at all. They hurriedly teleported over to Yi Xian, and then Yi Xian placed 2 spatial rings in the masked old man's hand. The masked old man immediately turned around and left. In the distance, Supreme Mist frowned slightly. "You actually have so many universe veins." As she spoke, she slowly clenched her right fist. Right at this moment, her pupils constricted, and she swiftly turned around and punched. Rumble! The space in front of Supreme Mist suddenly exploded apart, and then she retreated explosively for over 100 kilometers. Meanwhile, an afterimage charged towards her. It was a majestic sight. In the distance, Supreme Mist was shocked, and she didn't dare to be careless. She opened her palm, and an umbrella suddenly appeared in her hand. In the next moment, she opened the umbrella and pushed it forward. A palm suddenly slammed against the umbrella. Rumble! The umbrella suddenly exploded, and Supreme Mist, who was behind it, instantly retreated hundreds of thousands of meters away. As soon as she stopped, the galaxy behind her was directly destroyed, and at the same time, the remnant shadow had already dashed in front of her. Their speed was simply too fast. It was so fast that even Yi Xian wasn't able to accurately capture its trajectory. It was simply terrifying. In the distance, Supreme Mist's expression instantly changed when she saw the afterimage charge in front of her. It was too fast. She suddenly clenched her fists tightly, and a terrifying force swept out from within her. Rumble! With Supreme Mist at the center, the surroundings suddenly exploded, and a terrifying pressure and force instantly swept through the starry sky. Bang! An afterimage suddenly retreated madly in the starry sky. It was Supreme Mist. As she retreated, the afterimage appeared above her again, and then he suddenly stomped down. Rumble! Supreme Mist fell straight down from the starry sky. In an instant, she smashed into the ground, and then an enormous abyss appeared there. However, in the next moment, Supreme Mist charged out from within the abyss. But she'd only just emerged when the afterimage appeared above her again, and then he stomped down again. Rumble! Supreme Mist was stomped down into the bottomless abyss once more. Meanwhile, Master Yun suddenly stopped in the starry sky, and then he turned around and charged towards the black shadow. Obviously, he wanted to relieve the pressure on Supreme Mist. The black shadow suddenly turned around and smashed his fist forward. Rumble! In an instant, Yun Shi was sent flying more than 100,000 zhang away. As soon as he stopped, his body split apart, and blood sprayed out. Master Yun was slightly stunned. So terrifying? Master Yun gazed at the figure in the distance, and his voice trembled as he said, "Who exactly are you? Do you know that we're from the Immortal Mausoleum?" The figure in the distance paid no attention to him, and he charged down towards the abyss. Obviously, he intended to kill Supreme Mist. Yi Xian suddenly gazed at Tianqi. Tianqi, let's attack together. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged towards Master Yun. He was overjoyed when he saw that Master Yun was injured. Now that Supreme Mist was busy, it was the best opportunity for him to kill both Master Yun and the Tribulation Lord. Yi Xian was extremely swift, and a ray of light shot towards Master Yun. On the other hand, Tianqi had charged towards Master Yun as well when he heard Yi Xian. Master Yun's expression instantly changed when he saw Yi Xian and Tianqi charge towards him. He was quite fearful of Yi Xian and Tianqi, especially Yi Xian because he'd actually been able to fight Supreme Mist for so long just now. Moreover, he was heavily injured right now. Master Yun didn't hesitate to turn around and flee. He was extremely swift, and he instantly vanished into the ends of the starry sky. Yi Xian and Tianqi were stunned when they witnessed this scene. He fled just like that? Yi Xian suddenly turned around to look at the Tribulation Lord in the distance. The Tribulation Lord had escaped the battle and vanished into the starry sky as soon as Supreme Mist fled. Yi Xian's face instantly darkened when he witnessed this scene. Damn it! These fellows flee when they can't win. They really don't have any backbone. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian looked towards the abyss below, and he was slightly puzzled. Is Supreme Mist dead? Right at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. It was exactly that figure from before. Yi Xian gazed at the figure while he became vigilant in his heart. Even if it was standing right in front of him, he wouldn't be able to see its true appearance. The figure suddenly said, "She fled." Yi Xian frowned slightly. I actually allowed her to flee. Meanwhile, the masked old man appeared in front of Yi Xian, and he returned 3 million universe veins to Yi Xian. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he withdrew 500,000 universe veins and passed them to the figure. This is for you. The figure gazed at Yi Xian. There's no need for that. I won't take a single cent from you if you don't complete the mission. Yi Xian grinned. This is your reward. The figure fell silent for a moment before he said, My principles. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and vanished into the horizon. Principles. Yi Xian gazed towards the depths of the starry sky and spoke softly, Senior, who is he? The masked old man replied, You've met him. Yi Xian spoke solemnly, The God of Forgiveness? The masked old man nodded. Yi Xian was quite curious. What's his background? The masked old man shook his head. I don't know. In any case, he's very mysterious. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, I want all the information about the immortal tomb. The masked old man was slightly hesitant. Yi Xian smiled. Is it very difficult? The masked old man hurriedly shook his head. No. As he spoke, he took out a scroll and passed it to Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, I didn't hesitate just now because I didn't want to hurt young Master Yi. The Culpa Lord and the others aren't scary, but the immortal tomb behind them is scary, and the strength of the immortal tomb. Yi Xian glanced at the masked old man. I hate it when people talk to me about the people behind them. I have people behind me, but am I too arrogant? As he spoke, he snorted coldly. They should be glad that I, Yi Xian, don't want to be a backer. Otherwise, I'd fucking rely on the entire universe to death. Do you believe me? The masked old man hesitated and said, Young Master Yi, this old man has one more thing to say. Bragging isn't a very good thing. Don't brag. Yi Xian spoke seriously. I'm not bragging this time. The masked old man nodded. I understand. Yi Xian. Chapter 2259. Yi Xian was speechless. He stopped talking nonsense with the old man and opened the scroll that the masked old man gave him. His expression froze when he saw it. Dao Ling suddenly walked over. He was curious when he saw Yi Xian's expression. Brother Yi, what's wrong? Yi Xian said calmly, See for yourself. As he spoke, he handed the scroll to Dao Ling. Like Yi Xian, Dao Ling froze as soon as he saw it. Shirtian also walked over. He took the scroll and looked at it. His expression turned serious. Immortal Mausoleum. There were 980 people who had transcended time. 980 people. The three of them were completely dumbfounded when they saw that sentence. What the hell? 980 people who had transcended time? That was not the main point. The main point was that there were super terrifying experts who had transcended time in the Immortal Mausoleum. Actually, the three of them were no longer interested in looking at the experts behind them. 980 people who had transcended time. These experts were enough to kill the four of them. Yi Xian looked at the masked old man. This information is correct, right? The masked old man shook his head. No. Yi Xian was curious. Since they are so terrifying, why did they only send so few experts to kill us? Furthermore, the ones who came aren't even the strongest experts. The masked old man said in a low voice, "We specially investigated what young Master Yi said. We discovered that it is not the entire Immortal Mausoleum that is targeting young Master Yi. It is just a few individuals within the Immortal Mausoleum." Yi Xian frowned. A few individuals? The masked old man nodded. There is also a person who possesses the great Dao's providence in the Immortal Mausoleum. This person has an extremely high status in the Immortal Mausoleum. He might even be the next Immortal Mausoleum master. There are people below who want to curry favor with this person. Therefore, they took the initiative to send people to find you. They want to kill you to please that person. Hearing that, the faces of Yi Xian and the other two darkened. He really didn't care about martial ethics. The masked old man said in a low voice, "Actually, young Master Yi, since this matter isn't the intention of the Immortal Tomb Master, nor is it the intention of that person, then I feel that this matter can be big or small. You can ask the Pavilion Master to come forward and mediate for you. The Immortal Mausoleum is powerful, there is no need to fight to the death with them." Yi Xian said indifferently, "Mediation? They've tried to mess with us time and time again, and we still have to beg them?" The masked old man hesitated for a moment before he said, "It's mainly because all of you can't defeat him right now." Yi Xian was silent. Mediation? Yi Xian shook his head. "I can't swallow this." "Can't beat him? It doesn't matter. If I can't beat it, I can run. I'll come back after I've developed for a while." "Can't beat him? Beg for mercy." "This won't do." Yi Xian was shameless, not without dignity. The masked old man said in a deep voice, "Young Master Yi, what do you plan to do?" Yi Xian was silent for a moment, and then he smiled and said, "Since the entire Immortal Tomb isn't targeting us, then what are we afraid of? In any case, they're sneaky, aren't they?" The masked old man shook his head. "That's true, but if all of you kill them, then the matter will become huge. There'll be an endless stream of trouble in the future." Yi Xian turned to look at Dao Ling and Shirtian. "What do the two of you think?" Dao Ling fell silent. Shirtendo said, "My reason tells me that we should sue for peace. But my heart tells me that we should fight them." Yi Xian roared with laughter. "Then will you follow your reason or your heart?" Shirtian looked at Yi Xian. "I'll listen to you, Brother Yi." Yi Xian was speechless. Dao Ling also said, "Brother Yi, you make the decision." Yi Xian nodded. "I've decided to continue fighting them. There are two reasons. First, those fellows will never let us go. They'll definitely come back to mess with us again. Second, if we go to the Immortal Tomb to beg, I really can't do something as humble as that." Shirtian nodded. "I can't do it either." Dao Ling smiled. "Then we'll continue fighting them." Yi Xian nodded. "Let's just fight them." Shirtian suddenly said, "Brother Yi, you haven't transcended time, but you're stronger than us. Why is that?" Dao Ling looked at Yi Xian with curiosity in his eyes. Yi Xian smiled. "I haven't transcended time. Instead, I've fused with time." Shirtian frowned slightly. "Fused with time?" Yi Xian nodded. As he spoke, he shared his cultivation insights with Shirtian and Dao Ling. Unfortunately, Shirtian and Dao Ling couldn't fuse with the river of time. That was because the river didn't care about them. However, the two of them gained a lot from this. Yi Xian suddenly said, "We've just broken through. Our realms aren't stable yet. The most important thing now is to stabilize our realms." Shirtian nodded. "All right." Yi Xian and the other two cultivated on the spot. Tian Qi didn't cultivate. He just ate meat at the side. Yi Xian and the other two felt helpless. This guy loved meat like his life. Without caring about Tianqi, Yi Xian and the other two started to stabilize their realms. Inside the primordial shrine, Primordial Yuan smiled. I didn't expect that they actually survived. Primordial God Tree shook his head. That guy actually used money to kill revered mist. I didn't expect that someone actually dared to accept it. Primordial Yuan nodded. Do you know who that person was? Primordial God Tree shook his head. Patriarch, I haven't gone out for many years. I know some of the people and strengths in the past. But the ones that appeared later. As he spoke, he shook his head once more. He suddenly felt complicated. He hadn't gone out for many, many years. As for the primal god race, they had nearly been forgotten by the world. Primordial Yuan was silent for a moment before saying, in a bit, give each of them 1,000,000 universe veins. Primordial God Tree was stunned. Why? Primordial Yuan had a calm expression. I've decided to increase the investment. Primordial God Tree hesitated for a moment and then said, Patriarch, even we don't have many universe veins, our clansmen need them. Primordial Yuan shook his head. You're wrong. What my primal god race needs right now isn't money. What they need is lucky chances, massive lucky chances. Without lucky chances, no matter how much money we have, we won't be able to return to Primordial City. Primordial God Tree nodded. I understand. After speaking, he turned and left. Primordial Yuan looked into the distant horizon and said in a soft voice, will they be my primal god race's last chance? Outside the primordial shrine, Yi Xian sat in the air like an old monk in meditation. He was using the river of time. When he had just broken through because of revered mist and the others, he hadn't had time to control the river of time. The river of time had fused with him. In theory, as long as he wanted to, he could take the power of time. Now, he wanted to put it into practice. It had to be said that after fusing with the river of time, Yi Xian discovered that he could use the power of time even more smoothly. Unfortunately, he didn't have the profound blue sword. Otherwise, with his current strength, he could easily kill revered mist. Profound blue sword. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He missed these two little fellows a little. Yi Xian shook his head, threw away the distracting thoughts in his mind, and began to concentrate on cultivating. Time slowly passed. After Yi Xian completely fused with the river of time, he began to try to stimulate the entire river of time. It wasn't realistic to stimulate the entire river of time with his own strength, but what if the river of time actively cooperated? However, even with the river of time's active cooperation, he could only stimulate the river of time within a radius of 1,000,000 zhang. This was his current limit. However, this was already very terrifying. He could even mobilize the river of time within 1,000,000 zhang. Although he hadn't transcended time yet, he was even more terrifying than that. Yi Xian took a deep breath, a little excited. He could now mobilize the power of time within 1,000,000 zhang. If it was just the power of time alone, it wouldn't be so terrifying. However, if it was fused with his sword technique, that would be extraordinarily terrifying. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian turned to look at Dao Ling and Shirtian in the distance. At this moment, their auras were at least several times stronger than before. Obviously, both of them had completely consolidated their realms. Now, if they were to fight the robber again, they would definitely win. At this moment, both of them also looked at Yi Xian. Dao Ling smiled. Brother Yi. Yi Xian said in a low voice, we have to cooperate. Dao Ling asked, like before? Yi Xian nodded. If the four of us join forces, then we'll definitely be able to instantly kill Venerable Mist with ease. However, if we fight her in a one-on-one battle, then any one of us will be unable to kill her. So, when you encounter members of the Immortal Tomb next time, just watch my signal. Dao Ling nodded, all right. Yi Xian gazed at Tianqi as well. Dao Ling and Shirtian glanced at Tianqi, and then they nodded in agreement. Meanwhile, the primeval god tree suddenly appeared here. It opened its palm, and then 4 spatial rings slowly floated over to Yi Xian's group of 4. Every single spatial ring had 1 million universe veins. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. "Senior, this," the primeval god tree smiled, "the patriarch asked me to give it to all of you. He said that all of you probably lack it right now." Yi Xian fell silent. He understood what the primeval god tree meant. Yi Xian didn't refuse it and put the spatial rings away, and then he said, "Senior, please tell the primeval Yuan patriarch that we brothers will definitely repay the primeval god tree's help today." The primeval god tree nodded. "Thank you." Yi Xian smiled. "We have to go. Senior, we'll meet again." As soon as he finished speaking, he led Dao Ling and the others away. The primeval god tree looked up into the sky in silence, and no one knew what it was thinking. In the starry sky, Dao Ling, who stood by Yi Xian's side, asked, "Brother Yi, what should we do now?" Yi Xian said indifferently, "Wait." Dao Ling frowned slightly. "Wait for who?" Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. "Wait for Venerable Mist and the others. If I'm not wrong, they'll definitely come looking for us soon. Remember, so long as any one of them appears, then immediately attack. Don't waste your breath, just kill them first. We'll chat after we kill them. This will be our style in the future." Dao Ling nodded. "All right." Right at this moment, the space in front of them suddenly trembled. A moment later, a bolt of lightning appeared, and then the Tribulation Lord appeared. The Tribulation Lord had just appeared and was about to speak when Yi Xian's group of 4 suddenly swarmed over. The Tribulation Lord was dumbfounded. "What the hell? I didn't even say anything. Vote first, then scold. Thank you." Chapter 2260. When he saw Yi Xian's group of 4 attack, the Tribulation Lord didn't hesitate to turn around and flee. He was extremely swift, and he vanished into the starry sky in the blink of an eye. Now, it was Yi Xian's group of 4 who were stunned. What the hell? He fled so decisively? Yi Xian's group of 4 were slightly speechless. Actually, the Tribulation Lord was very clear about one thing now, and that was that he was utterly unable to resist Yi Xian's group of 4 who had broken through. 1 against 4? Not to mention now, even if he still had the myriad tribulation body, he wouldn't be able to defeat the joint forces of Yi Xian's group of 4, let alone now. Thus, he decisively chose to flee. Only an idiot wouldn't flee. In the battlefield, Dao Ling said in a low voice, "Brother Yi, this fellow isn't fighting us." Yi Xian's expression was slightly unsightly as well. Since when did the enemies become so smart? First it was Shiqian who directly knelt, and now it was this Tribulation Lord who fled when the situation wasn't right. Could it be that it was because the Daoist wasn't suppressed? But it was normal. If they knew to flee when they couldn't win, then others would definitely do the same. Shiqian said in a low voice, "Will they come again?" Yi Xian nodded. "They should." Shiqian looked at Yi Xian. "Brother Yi, why don't we go directly to the Immortal Mausoleum?" Yi Xian smiled. "Why would we go to the Immortal Mausoleum?" Shiqian said in a low voice, "Doesn't the Immortal Mausoleum have a possessor of the karmic luck of the Grand Dao? Let's go find him and fight fairly." Yi Xian shook his head. "We can't go." Shiqian was slightly puzzled. "Why?" Yi Xian said, "Find him and then what?" Shiqian said in a low voice, "Let's fight fairly." Yi Xian said indifferently, "What if he doesn't fight fairly? Even if he's willing, what if the Immortal Mausoleum isn't willing?" Shiqian was silent. Yi Xian shook his head. "If we lose the bet, then we're finished." Shiqian laughed bitterly. "But now, we're in a rather passive position." Yi Xian shook his head. "I think it's good now because we don't have to face the entire Immortal Mausoleum. We can use Revered Mist and the others as whetstones." Shiqian's eyes narrowed. "Whetstone?" Yi Xian nodded. "We've already broken through. If we still want to improve, the best way is to fight. If you can kill them, then kill them. If you can't, then use them as sparring partners." Shiqian was speechless. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Come on, let's go into the River of Time." With that, he brought the 3 of them into the River of Time. Now that he had fused with the River of Time, he could freely enter and leave the River of Time. Year Moon City. No one knew who rebuilt the time city that had been destroyed by Qingguan. When Yi Xian's group arrived at Yearmoon City, more than a dozen spiritual senses suddenly swept over them. Yi Xian looked around and slowly closed his eyes. Soon, he raised his head and looked into the distance. In the next moment, he brought Shirtyan's group and disappeared into the distance. A while later, Yi Xian's group of 4 arrived at a riverside. On the riverside, there was a small courtyard. In front of the small courtyard was a vegetable garden. Inside the vegetable garden, a lean old man was weeding. Yi Xian walked to the vegetable garden and smiled. "Greetings, senior." The old man glanced at Yi Xian and continued weeding. Yi Xian smiled. "Senior, can we have a chat?" The old man replied calmly, "What do you want to chat about?" Yi Xian looked at the old man. "About life." In the distance, the old man suddenly put down his hoe and turned to look at Yi Xian. "Little fellow, I don't want to get involved in the matter between you and the Immortal Mausoleum. Don't have any ideas about me." Yi Xian smiled. "Senior misunderstands. I just want to ask Senior about a few things." The old man nodded slightly. "Ask away." Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. "What is a time immortal?" The old man in front of him was the only time immortal in the river of time. After seeing this old man, Yi Xian discovered that this time immortal's strength was even more terrifying than he'd imagined. The old man put down his hoe and walked to a nearby stone bench to sit down. "All of you, sit." Yi Xian's group of 4 sat in front of the old man. The old man sized up Yi Xian's group and chuckled. "The last time I saw you, you were still a bit weak. But now, you've actually transcended the time immortal. This speed is not an ordinary kind of fast." As he spoke, his gaze descended onto Yi Xian. "Especially you. You were actually able to fuse with the river of time. Needless to say, I'm really shocked." Yi Xian grinned. "Senior, I'm puzzled. Exactly what realm is this time immortal at? Has it transcended the time immortal?" The old man thought for a moment and said, "What is the time realm?" It refers to those who have just grasped the energy of time. Such people can be called the time realm. This realm was suggested by Miss Qingguan. Of course, there were others who had started to grasp the energy of time before she did. However, they weren't called the time realm at that time, they were called time walkers. Moreover, everyone's understanding of the energy of time isn't sufficient. Miss Qingguan perfected this realm very well. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. "What about transcending the time immortal?" The old man chuckled. "The so-called transcending the time immortal is actually a joke." Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. "A joke?" The old man spoke softly. "Just look at the boundless river of time. How many people are able to transcend it? The so-called time immortal is even more of a joke. What is time immortal? It's eternal life, true eternal life. Because the passage of time isn't of any use to you. Only experts who have truly transcended the time immortal would dare to say that time immortal doesn't affect them." As he spoke, he looked at Shirtian and Dao Ling who were at the side. He waved his right hand lightly, and a terrifying force instantly enveloped the two of them. Their expressions instantly changed violently when they were enveloped by this force because they noticed that their lifespans were actually starting to disappear at a rapid pace. Meanwhile, the old man withdrew his right hand. "That person over there spoke of the corrosion of time just now. Do you think they can resist it?" Yi Xian fell silent. The old man continued, "I've only seen one person who can resist the corrosion of time." Yi Xian was slightly curious. "Who?" The old man spoke softly. "Miss Qingguan." Yi Xian was stunned, and then he said, "Didn't she say that she doesn't cultivate?" The old man shook his head and smiled. "I don't know as well. In any case, all I know is that time isn't able to corrode her. Besides her, even top-rate experts who have transcended the age barrier are unable to resist the corrosion of time." Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. "Senior, do you know of Exalt Mist from the Tomb of Immortals?" The old man nodded. "I know of Dao Dian Dian." Yi Xian was slightly curious. "What realm is she at?" The old man smiled. "After transcending the age barrier, you know." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "I know." The old man nodded. "After transcending the age barrier, it's time to control it." Yi Xian's face froze. The old man smiled. Do you think it's very ridiculous? After transcending, she actually wants to control the age barrier. Yi Xian nodded. It's very ridiculous indeed. The old man spoke softly. Transcending doesn't represent transcendence. It's just like the relationship between a man and a woman in the mortal world. Sleeping doesn't represent love. The expressions of Yi Xian's group of 3 froze when they heard this. What the fuck? What sort of analogy is that? Sleeping? It doesn't represent love? There's a story behind this old man. The old man smiled. It's just like that. When they cultivate to a certain extent, they'll notice that the river of time isn't as simple as they thought. So, they start to study the river of time with the hope of controlling it. On the other hand, little fellow, it's like you've directly surpassed 2 realms and attained the age barrier. Moreover, you're different from others. Others rely on the river of time, but you've directly fused with it. There's a qualitative difference. It's just like the relationship between a man and a woman in the mortal world. You've both loved and slept with it. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, Senior, let's not use analogies. There's no need for analogies, I understand. He was slightly afraid of this old man. What kind of analogy is that? It's even more ridiculous than Xiao Ta's. The old man smiled. Isn't my analogy a little inappropriate? Yi Xian was speechless. This isn't a matter of whether it's appropriate or not. You're simply taking the meaning of it astray. The old man continued, Don't pay attention to these details. Let's get back to the main topic. Venerable Mist controls time, and time immortal is a realm above that. What is a time immortal? Those who experience the passage of time without losing themselves are time immortals. After attaining the time immortal realm, even though you can't truly avoid the passage of time, you can coexist with it. It's not fusion, it's coexistence. It's just like the relationship between a man and a woman in the mortal world. They just live together, not on the same bed. But you live together and on the same bed. That's amazing. Yi Xian and the others were speechless. Yi Xian felt a headache coming on. The old man continued, What else do you want to ask? Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. Senior, according to what you said, I'm considered a time immortal now? The old man shook his head. No. Even though you've fused with the river of time, you still can't truly control it. This river is endless and profound. If you want to become a time immortal, you must first experience the endless passage of time and reach a certain height in your mental state. Only then can you be considered a time immortal. Thus, becoming a time immortal is a process of tempering your mental state. Right now, you are too young. You haven't been tempered by the passage of time, and your mental state hasn't transcended the passage of time. Thus, you can't be considered a time immortal. Yi Xian turned his head and looked at the old man. Is it enough to walk through the river of time? The old man shook his head. Walking through the river of time is just a process. What you can comprehend in this process is the key. It's like when someone reads a book. If you read seriously, you can gain a lot from the book. If you don't read seriously, you won't gain anything. Hearing this, Yi Xian nodded. I understand. Then he looked at the old man. Senior, to tell you the truth, us brothers are preparing to go to the Immortal Mausoleum. Are you interested in joining us? The old man shook his head. Not interested. Yi Xian said seriously, Don't be afraid. We have people behind us. The old man said calmly, There's no one behind me. Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but the old man shook his head. The reason an old man like me has lived until now is because I stand aloof from worldly affairs. If I don't cause trouble for others, others won't cause trouble for me. I don't have any other requests. I just want to live longer, have more relationships, and enjoy more worldly pleasures. Yi Xian. Chapter 2261. Yi Xian was speechless. This old man isn't serious. However, he was also a bit envious. Actually, isn't this old man's life a kind of happiness? The old man said, Little guy, this immortal mausoleum isn't simple. You have to be careful. Yi Xian nodded. Thank you for the reminder, senior. The old man smiled. If the 4 of you want to become time immortals, You have to walk through this mortal world. Moreover, you might not gain anything. So, my suggestion is to stabilize your realm and cultivation and reach the level of controlling time. The Tao of time seems simple but is actually very complicated. It isn't something that can be comprehended in 2 or 3 days. Yi Xian nodded. I understand. With that, he stood up and cupped his fists. Senior, thank you for answering my question. The old man smiled. Little friend, I also have 2 questions. Can I ask you? Yi Xian nodded. Of course. The old man smiled. How do you fuse with time? Yi Xian blinked. Senior wants to know? The old man nodded. Of course, if it isn't convenient, I won't force you. Yi Xian smiled. It's actually very simple. You can talk to the river of time. It has intelligence and can communicate with it. The old man was silent. Yi Xian smiled. Does Senior not believe me? The old man nodded. It's a bit unbelievable. However, I know little friend has no reason to lie to me. Then, can you explain? Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. This can't be explained. I can only say that it depends on your eloquence. Eloquence? The old man shook his head and smiled. Little friend, don't tease me. I've come into contact with the intelligence of the river of time. It's extremely difficult to get along with. Yi Xian thought about it and said, You really want to know? The old man nodded. Yi Xian grinned. There's someone behind me. The old man's expression froze. Yi Xian smiled. Senior, we'll meet again. With that he stood up and left. The old man was silent for a long time before shaking his head. Damn second generation. On the other side, Yi Xian and his 3 brothers were traversing the river of time. The 4 of them were silent. Yi Xian said softly, It is not realistic to reach the time immortal level at the moment. Xianxia nodded. It's indeed unrealistic. Our cultivation speed is already very fast. Any faster, and that would be abnormal. Yi Xian nodded slightly. However, with our current strength, if we encounter an expert on the level of the time immortal, we will be beaten up again. We need to prepare for a rainy day. As he spoke up to hear, he turned to look at Xianxia. Xianxia, you said earlier that you wanted to share the ruins of a time immortal with us. Where is it? Xianxia laughed bitterly. Brother Yi, even if we find the ruins of the lunar immortal and obtain his inheritance, I'm afraid it'll be difficult for us to break through in a short period of time. Yi Xian smiled and said, You misunderstood me. My goal isn't his legacy, but his legacy. Xianxia frowned. Inheritance? Yi Xian nodded. We have to get some money. So long as we have enough money, then we can even kill a time immortal. Dao Ling hurriedly nodded. Miss Qin Guan doesn't even have to lift a finger to kill someone. Xianxia fell silent for a moment before he said, Let's go. The 4 of them left the river of time, and as soon as they did, Venerable Mist led the Tribulation Lord and Master Yun to appear before Yi Xian's group of 4. Venerable Mist gazed at Yi Xian with a rather gloomy expression. You damnable swordsman. Let me see if you can escape this time. Yi Xian suddenly withdrew the Dark Heaven token, and in the next moment, the masked old man appeared here. The masked old man suddenly felt a headache when he saw Yi Xian. This young Master Yi is simply a devil. Yi Xian spoke indifferently, Help me put out a bounty. I'll give you 5 million universe veins if you kill Venerable Mist. 5 million? In the distance, Venerable Mist's expression instantly became ferocious, and she glared angrily at Yi Xian. Have you gone mad? Do you have 5 million universe veins? Yi Xian opened his palm, and a spatial ring fell in front of the masked old man. The masked old man glanced at it, and there really were 5 million universe veins within the spatial ring. The masked old man was instantly shocked when he saw these 5 million universe veins. Where did this fellow get so many universe veins from? These universe veins were given to the 4 of them by the primal god race. Each of them had 1 million universe veins, and they already had 1 million universe veins to begin with. Thus, the 4 of them had 9 million universe veins. Because besides the 2 million universe veins that the primal god race had given them, Yi Xian still had the 1 million universe veins that his mother had given him. When they saw Yi Xian really produce 5 million universe veins, it wasn't just the masked old man, even the distant Tribulation Lord and Master Yun were shocked. Both of them turned to glance at Venerable Mist. It had to be said that at this moment, both of them wanted to attack and kill Venerable Mist. 5 million universe veins. This absolutely wasn't something that an ordinary person could produce. Only a top influence like the Immortal Mausoleum would be able to produce so many universe veins. Where had Yi Xian obtained them from? At this moment, Venerable Mist suddenly said fiercely, "It's the primal god race. The primal god race is helping them." She knew that these universe veins had definitely been given to Yi Xian by the primal god race. Only a super influence like the primal god race could produce so many universe veins. Although the primal god race wasn't as strong as they were in the past, they were still able to produce 5 million universe veins. Thinking of this, killing intent erupted from Venerable Mist's eyes. In the past, it had been the primal god race that had stopped them from killing Yi Xian's group of 4. But now, Yi Xian's group of 4 had experienced an explosive increase in strength. Even if they joined forces, it would still be difficult to kill them. In the distance, the masked old man glanced at Yi Xian and said, "Young Master Yi, do you really want to issue a bounty?" Yi Xian nodded, "Yes. I will give these 5 million universe veins to whoever can take that woman's head." The masked old man hesitated for a moment and then nodded, "All right." With that he turned around to leave. At this moment, Venerable Mist suddenly said fiercely, "Sir, does your immortal treasure pavilion really want to help him?" The masked old man looked at Venerable Mist. "We are only helping to issue a bounty. We haven't helped young Master Yi." Venerable Mist glared at the masked old man. "You dare to issue a bounty for someone from the immortal tomb?" The masked old man frowned. "You aren't trying to threaten me, right?" Venerable Mist slowly clenched her right hand. "What if I say yes?" The masked old man said lightly, "If you do that, then I can only call you Pavilion Master. Let me tell you, Venerable Mist. This young Master Yi might not be able to kill you if he issues a bounty for you, but if you annoy my Pavilion Master and he issues a bounty for you, your head will roll to the ground in an instant. Do you believe me?" Venerable Mist was so angry that she laughed instead. "How laughable! My head roll to the ground? How absurd!" At the side, Master Yun hesitated for a moment and said, "Venerable Mist, don't offend the Immortal Treasure Pavilion." He'd dealt with the Immortal Treasure Pavilion in the past. Even though the Immortal Treasure Pavilion was a merchant group and didn't have much combat strength, the Pavilion Master was really heaven-defying. Venerable Mist's expression was extremely unsightly. "It's the Immortal Treasure Pavilion that's not giving me face." In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly looked at the masked old man and spoke anxiously, "Senior, she's even threatening our Immortal Treasure Pavilion. How can we tolerate this? Ask Qin Guan to come out." The masked old man hesitated for a moment, and then he turned to look at Venerable Mist. "Venerable Mist, I'll repeat for the last time. We're only issuing a bounty for young Master Yi and have no intention of helping him. If you have the money, we can issue a bounty for you as well." Venerable Mist stared fixedly at the masked old man. "If you dare to issue that bounty, then it's equivalent to representing the Immortal Treasure Pavilion to declare war on my immortal tomb." She was very clearly aware that if the Immortal Treasure Pavilion really issued this bounty, then there would definitely be people coming to kill her. 5 million universe veins. Someone would definitely be tempted, and even the experts within the immortal tomb would be tempted. 5 million universe veins. It was really too much. Not to mention others, even she herself was tempted. When Master Yun heard Venerable Mist, his expression changed. "Venerable Mist, you can't." The Tribulation Lord hurriedly said, "You absolutely can't." At this moment, both of them were slightly panicked. Firstly, they were utterly unable to represent the entire immortal tomb. If something like this happened, then it would be like playing with fire. Secondly, that mysterious Pavilion Master was really heaven-defying. Especially the Tribulation Lord, he'd personally experienced how terrifying Qin Guan was. She was simply a woman that was even more flashy than Yi Xian. Venerable Mist paid no attention to the Tribulation Lord and Master Yun, and she stared fixedly at the masked old man. The masked old man thought for a moment before he nodded. He opened his palm, and a talisman suddenly shot into the sky. In the next moment, an enormous screen of light appeared in the depths of the starry sky. Within the screen of light, a blurry figure gradually condensed into appearance, and it wasn't long before Qin Guan appeared before everyone. At this moment, Qin Guan was within a cave, and an emaciated old man sat cross-legged not too far behind her. The old man didn't emanate any aura. Yi Xian glanced at the cave and was slightly puzzled. Did Qin Guan rob a tomb? Qin Guan suddenly turned around, and she was slightly stunned when she saw Yi Xian, and then she smiled and said, "Young Master Yi, are you looking for me?" Yi Xian hurriedly shook his head. "No, it's not me. It's the members of the Immortal Tomb who are looking for you." Qin Guan blinked. "The members of the Immortal Tomb are looking for me?" Yi Xian nodded. As he spoke, he pointed at Venerable Mist in the distance. Qin Guan looked at Venerable Mist. "Is there something you need?" Venerable Mist's expression was calm. "Pavilion Master Qin, your people want to place a bounty on me." Qin Guan frowned slightly, and she looked at the masked old man. The masked old man hesitated and then said, "It's young Master Yi who wants to place a bounty on her, and it has nothing to do with us. But she doesn't want us to place a bounty on her, and said that if we place a bounty on her, it's a declaration of war against the Immortal Tomb." Qin Guan looked at Venerable Mist. "Can you represent the Immortal Tomb?" Venerable Mist stared at Qin Guan. "Yes." Qin Guan thought about it and then said, "Are you sure?" Venerable Mist said fiercely, "Why do you have so much nonsense to say? If I say I can, then I can. What, does your celestial treasure pavilion dare to declare war against the Immortal Tomb?" Qin Guan blinked. The next moment, she formed a seal with both hands and silently chanted an incantation. After a moment, she suddenly opened her eyes and shouted, "Mali Mali Ku, money come, oh no, sword come. Sword come." Boom. Suddenly, a sword appeared above Venerable Mist's head. The next moment, that sword fell straight down. Before Venerable Mist could react, that sword stabbed into her body. Boom. Venerable Mist's body shattered. Everyone. P.S. Mali Mali Ku, tickets come. Chapter 2262. At this moment, Mist Reverend was completely stunned. What's going on? She actually didn't even sense that attack. The Tribulation Lord and Yunshi were astounded, and their eyes were filled with terror. Pavilion Master Qin is a swordsman? Right at this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly enveloped the Mist Reverend, and the Mist Reverend's soul that should have dissipated was actually forcefully preserved under the envelopment of this aura. Meanwhile, a middle-aged man appeared on the other side of the sky. The Tribulation Lord and Yunshi were shocked when they saw the middle-aged man, and they hurriedly bowed slightly. "Sage Gu." Yi Xian glanced at the middle-aged man and was slightly surprised. Obviously, the middle-aged man was an extraordinary expert at the time Immortal realm. Sage Gu gazed at Qin Guan. "Pavilion Master Qin, you're going too far." Qin Guan's beautiful brows knit together slightly. "Are you criticizing me?" Sage Gu's face remained expressionless. "Yes." Qin Guan nodded. "Looks like you want to fight." Sage Gu's expression was calm. "Please provide me with your guidance, Pavilion Master Qin." Qin Guan spoke abruptly. "Where's the starship?" Bang. Suddenly, the space above Yi Xian and the others exploded apart, and then an enormous being flew out from within it. The enormous being was shaped like a ship, and it was over 100 kilometers long. It was simply like an enormous starry sky beast, and it emanated a shapeless pressure just by standing there. On the deck of the ship were a few hundred things that looked like flying birds. Every single one of them was completely pitch black, and it seemed to be made of some unknown special material. Sage Gu frowned slightly. "Are you intending to kill me with a divine artifact?" Qin Guan's expression was calm. "Divine armaments, dispatch and blast him to death." As soon as he finished speaking, a few hundred divine armaments suddenly shot into the sky, and then they aimed directly at Sage Gu. After that, rays of white light surged towards Sage Gu. Yi Xian's pupils constricted when he saw the rays of white light. Flee! As soon as he finished speaking, he grabbed Dao Ling, Shirtian, and Tianqi and ran. In every ray of white light, there was a disregard for martial virtue. Hundreds of disregard for martial virtue. Damn! Yi Xian panicked. A single disregard for martial virtue was already so terrifying, and now hundreds of them appeared together. Yi Xian's scalp went numb. As soon as Yi Xian and the others ran away, horrible explosions came from behind them. Even though Yi Xian and the others were dozens of galaxies away, they still felt their eardrums burst. They were scared out of their wits. Yi Xian and the other three stopped and turned around to take a look. What they saw made them dumbfounded. As far as they could see, all they could see was darkness. Dao Ling said with a trembling voice, "This?" At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Look." As they spoke, they looked towards the starry sky. The three of them looked in the direction of Yi Xian's finger and saw that the ancient sage was still there. However, he was only left with a wisp of his soul. Moreover, this wisp of soul was already dim and lightless, like a wisp of green smoke. Yi Xian and the others looked at each other in shock. This Gu God was really powerful. He was not dead. The Culpa Lord and Master Yun were not dead either, because they were hiding behind the Gu God, and he had blocked most of the power for them. Even so, they were not well off. Their bodies were blown up. Even their souls were blasted until they were transparent. To recover completely, it would take at least 100 years. The three were completely dumbfounded, especially the leader, Gu God. He was a time immortal, a rare top expert in this world, but he was dumbfounded just now. What were those things? The power was so great that even he could not block it. Deep in the starry sky, Qin Guan looked at the Gu God with a cold expression. "Get the Tomb Lord of the Immortal Tomb out." The Gu God, Qin Guan frowned. She waved her right hand, and the hundreds of divine armaments suddenly flew up and aimed at the Gu God. The Gu God's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly said, "Pavilion Master Qin, this is a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, a huge misunderstanding." Qin Guan suddenly pulled out a gun and pulled the trigger. Bang! A ray of white light directly ignored the starry sky and blasted onto the Gu God's body. Rumble! The Gu God retreated explosively, and his soul dimmed slightly. He was so weak that it felt like a single breath could blow him apart. Terror appeared in the Gu God's eyes. "I will really die. I will really die." That was what he felt at this moment. The woman in front of him had the ability to kill him. Qin Guan looked at the Gu God with a cold expression. "If you can win, then fight. If you can't, then it's a misunderstanding. Your skin is as thick as young Master Ye's." On the other side, Yi Xian's face instantly darkened. "What do you mean by as thick as me?" This Qin Guan really didn't know how to speak. It would probably be difficult for her to find a husband in the future. At this moment, the space-time behind the Gu Gods suddenly trembled. The next moment, an old man walked out. After the old man came out, he hurriedly looked at Qin Guan. "Pavilion Master Qin, I am the head of the 6 sages of the Immortal Mausoleum, Sage Shu." Qin Guan suddenly became expressionless. "What? Am I not worthy of your Immortal Mausoleum's Mausoleum Lord to come out?" Sage Shu hurriedly said, "No, no. The Mausoleum Lord is busy." Qin Guan angrily said, "Busy your ass." After saying that, she was stunned. The next moment, her face turned red, and she lightly patted her cheeks with both hands. "Don't use vulgar language. Everyone." Qin Guan looked at Sage Shu. "Is your Immortal Mausoleum declaring war on my Immortal Treasure Pavilion?" Sage Shu hurriedly said, "No, no. This is just a misunderstanding, a huge misunderstanding." Qin Guan's expression was calm. "Tell your Immortal Mausoleum Lord that if you cause trouble for my Immortal Treasure Pavilion again, I will go to your Immortal Mausoleum and blow it up." After saying that, she turned and disappeared. Sage Shu's expression was somewhat ugly. The Immortal Mausoleum had never been threatened like this before, But there was nothing he could do. This pavilion Master Qin was too mysterious. Even the immortal mausoleum didn't dare to easily provoke her. As if thinking of something, he suddenly turned to look at the ancient sage. At this moment, the ancient sage's soul was already so illusory that it could not be seen. Sage Shu was shocked and was about to attack when Sage Gu shook his head. "It's too late." Sage Shu fell silent. Sage Gu softly said, "I originally thought that only a few people in this world could kill me." Saying that, he shook his head. "Arrogance killed me. If he hadn't spoken so arrogantly before, he wouldn't have died. But there were no ifs in life." Sage Gu suddenly looked at Yi Xian's group of 4 in the distance. "Old Shu, these 4 people have great Dao luck and are extremely monstrous. Don't let them grow, or they will bring you great disaster, even to the immortal mausoleum." After saying that, he completely disappeared. Sage Shu raised his head and looked at Yi Xian's group of 4 in the distance. In the next moment, he suddenly disappeared. At the end of the distant starry sky, beside Yi Xian, Shi Tian softly said, "Time immortal, why are the enemies always abnormally strong? It wasn't like this before." Dao Ling solemnly said, "Before, we were facing a time controller, but now the enemy is a time immortal. Who can withstand it?" Tian Qi continued to eat his meat. It didn't matter who the enemy was, as long as there was meat to eat. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Brothers, do you have confidence?" Dao Ling hesitated and then said, "To be honest, no." Shi Tian nodded. "Indeed." Yi Xian laughed. "Even if you don't have confidence, we have to fight. Brothers, let's fight." After saying that, he directly disappeared. A sword suddenly tore through the starry sky and slashed at Sage Shu, who was traversing the starry sky. Dao Ling, who was beside him, suddenly laughed and said, "Time immortal? What is there to fear? Let's just fight." After saying that, he directly disappeared. Shi Tian nodded. "Then let's fight. We have no other choice anyway." After saying that, he directly rushed towards the distant Sage Shu. The eyes of the leader, Yi Xian, flashed ferociously. He directly drew his sword and slashed. This slash directly mobilized the power of time within a radius of 1,000,000 zhang. Not only that, but he also activated the power of his bloodline. The slash, he used all his strength. He had to use all his strength. After all, before, they couldn't even defeat a time controller, let alone an expert at the level of a time immortal. 2 ranks higher? If it was before, perhaps there wouldn't be any problem. But now, after all, how many of those who could reach the level of time immortal were idiots? 2 ranks higher? How difficult. But they had to fight. Escape? There was nowhere to escape. Rumble. The starry sky suddenly exploded. The next moment, a wave of sword light shattered, and the leader, Yi Xian, directly retreated tens of thousands of zhang away. As soon as Yi Xian was sent flying, Dao Ling, with his 10,000 elephants dharma body, rushed to the head of the Sage Shu, and then smashed down with a fist. Boom! When this fist descended, it seemed as if it would crush the vast starry sky. It was extremely terrifying. The Sage Shu's face was expressionless. He flicked his sleeve. Rumble! A terrifying power of time swept out. In an instant, Dao Ling's entire body was directly blasted away, and his 10,000 elephants dharma body was instantly destroyed. At this moment, an afterimage rushed in front of the Sage Shu, and he directly punched at the Sage Shu's head. As this punch blasted out, the surrounding starry sky directly exploded, and countless stars were extinguished. The purest power of the physical body. The Sage Shu's face was expressionless, and he directly punched out. Had a rumble. Tian Qi directly flew back. As soon as he stopped, his right arm directly exploded, and his flesh split open. Blood splattered everywhere. It was extremely tragic. Meanwhile, Shi Tian suddenly appeared behind Sage of Book, and then he flipped his right hand before suddenly slapping down with his palm. A terrifying force poured out from the center of his palm, and at this moment, a shapeless barrier appeared behind Sage of Book. Bang! The force was actually completely blocked by the invisible barrier. The Sage Shu suddenly turned around and kicked. Bang! The The space in front of the sage Shu exploded apart, and Shi Tian retreated explosively for over 100 kilometers. As soon as he stopped moving, a wisp of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth, and his internal organs had been torn apart. The battle between them had merely taken less than a breath of time. In this one breath of time, the book sage had blocked all the attacks from the four of them. On the other side, Dao Ling wiped off the blood from the corners of his mouth, and then he gazed at the sage Shu and said, "Brother Yi, we can't beat him." Yi Xian fell silent for a moment, and then he said, "We might have been set up by Daoist. That fellow doesn't care about martial virtue. Can't he start with a weaker opponent when he's arranging his enemies?" It's really... In the Milky Way galaxy, a furious roar suddenly resounded from a certain room. Start with a weaker opponent? Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Did Yi Xian come first and then Tianqi? Bullshit, I've been putting up with you for a long time. You. Meanwhile, a sword suddenly appeared in the room. The walking sword of the Dao. The room was deathly silent. After a short moment, a calm voice resounded. My words were indeed a bit overboard. I apologize for that, and I will reflect on it. I won't do it again. I promise. Chapter 2263. In the starry sky, Yi Xian and the other three looked solemn. Really strong. The mist reverend was also strong, but compared to the sage of book, they were not on the same level. Apart from anything else, Yi Xian was also a little annoyed. The strength of the enemy was always abnormal. It was simply a little too outrageous. In the distance, the sage of book looked at Yi Xian and the other three calmly, but he was worried. The possessor of the great path luck. This kind of person was not an ordinary person. There was one possessor of the great path luck in the Immortal mausoleum, and that person's terror could only be described as abnormal. Although the four in front of him were not as terrifying as that person, he knew that the four of them had not fully grown. Although they were enemies, he had to admit that the four of them were indeed monstrous. Under normal circumstances, those who were 2 levels lower than him would not even have the courage to look him in the eye. As the ancient sage said, if the four of them were allowed to grow, his lineage would be in big trouble in the future. It might even bring great trouble to the Immortal mausoleum. Thinking of this, the sage of book looked at Yi Xian and the other three and clenched his right hand. The best way to solve problems was to get rid of them before they were formed. In the distance, at the end of the starry sky, Yi Xian looked calm. Under normal circumstances, we can't beat him. Dao Ling said solemnly, then what should we do? Yi Xian took a deep breath and chuckled. What else can we do? Of course we fight with our lives. I'll fight with my life first. With that, he slowly closed his eyes. Boom! Yi Xian's body started to burn. At the same time, the power of bloodline in his body surged wildly. But this time, he did not burn his soul. Without the Qingxian sword, once his soul was ignited, he would really be burnt to ashes. Seeing Yi Xian burn his body, Dao Ling and the other two were stunned. Was he really going to fight with his life? Yi Xian suddenly said, to fight against this person, the four of us must cooperate well. Do you understand what I mean? The three nodded. Yi Xian suddenly said, my sword is the strangest, it's suitable for support. But this time, I'll take the front, you guys support me. Dao Ling was stunned. Why? Yi Xian chuckled. Because it's really dangerous this time. With that he disappeared on the spot. A strand of blood-colored sword light suddenly tore through space and slashed straight at the distant book sage. The book sage's expression was calm. When the sword light arrived above his head, he suddenly opened his right hand and an invisible barrier appeared in front of him. Rumble! Yi Xian's sword was directly blocked by that barrier. At this time, Yi Xian appeared above the book sage and slashed down with his sword. Draw the sword to decide life and death. This sword strike had superimposed over 100,000 slashes. When the sword was unleashed, the entire starry sky exploded. It was incomparably terrifying. Rumble! As Yi Xian's sword slashed down, The barrier in front of the book sage suddenly trembled violently. A strand of blood-colored sword light suddenly exploded above the book sage's head. At this time, Yi Xian frantically slashed down with his sword. Chi 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 chi. In an instant, the surrounding starry sky directly roared. Countless blood-colored sword lights continuously spread out. The entire starry sky was a mess. At this time, Dao Ling and the others also rushed in front of the book sage. A frenzied siege. At this moment, the four of them did not hold back at all and did their best. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The entire endless starry sky suddenly boiled, and then was annihilated bit by bit. This was because the starry sky could no longer withstand the power of Yi Xian and the others. The four of them did not fight alone, but cooperated. Under the perfect cooperation of Yi Xian and the others, the book sage could not do anything to Yi Xian and the others for a moment. The more Yi Xian and the others fought, the more excited they became, and the more frenzied they became. At this time, a terrifying power suddenly swept through the starry sky. Rumble. The entire starry sky was obliterated. Yi Xian and the others retreated explosively for over 100 kilometers. The book sage stood silently in the distance, and her expression was terrifyingly gloomy. There was an ancient book in her hand, and the terrifying energy from before had come from this ancient book. The book sage stared fixedly at Yi Xian's group of four. Damn it! As soon as he finished speaking, his eyes suddenly closed slowly. In the next moment, the ancient book in his hand trembled slightly, and then a strand of terrifying energy suddenly surged out explosively from within the ancient book. Bang! A terrifying aura swept through the surroundings. In the distance, Yi Xian's pupils constricted abruptly. Everyone, watch out! As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly charged forward, and then he swiftly drew his sword and slashed. An expanse of blood-red sword light slashed down like a waterfall. Rumble. The expanse of blood-red sword light had just come into contact with the terrifying energy when it was instantly dispersed. Meanwhile, numerous flying swords suddenly slashed towards the book sage from all directions. The book sage had an emotionless expression on his face. He suddenly clenched his right hand into a fist and smashed it forward. Bang! A black circle suddenly surged out from within him, and then those four flying swords were instantly obliterated into nothingness. Meanwhile, the terrifying energy had arrived before Yi Xian's group of four. The expressions of Yi Xian's group of four changed violently, and they hurriedly attacked in unison. Rumble! A strand of terrifying energy suddenly erupted like a volcano in front of Yi Xian's group of four. Bang! 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 Along with four explosions, Yi Xian's group of four were blasted over 30 kilometers away. As soon as they stopped moving, besides Tianqi, the bodies of Yi Xian's group of three exploded apart. Their bodies were obliterated. The three of them weren't able to endure such terrifying energy at all. The book sage stared fixedly at Yi Xian's group of three. It's time to end this. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly charged towards Yi Xian's group of three. A wisp of a ferocious expression flashed through Yi Xian's eyes, and he was just about to charge forward. Meanwhile, a shadow charged towards the book sage. It was Tianqi. Tianqi suddenly roared furiously when he arrived in front of Sage of Book, and then he smashed his fist towards Sage of Book. A terrifying force swept out from within him, and at the same time, a furious roar that was like that of a wild beast resounded from within Tianqi, and it shook the heavens and the earth. Rumble. Tianqi's punch had actually forced the book sage back, but Tianqi himself was blasted over 30 kilometers away as well. As soon as he stopped moving, his body shattered, and a ball of blood exploded. He still couldn't defeat him. The book sage was stunned, and his eyes were filled with disbelief as he gazed at Tianqi. This bloodline? You're from that clan. Tianqi stared fixedly at the book sage and remained silent. The book sage had an extremely solemn expression on his face. You're actually from that clan? How could this be possible? Tianqi suddenly roared furiously, and then he charged towards the book sage again. However, Yi Xian stopped him. Only his soul remained, so he would definitely die if he charged forward again. Yi Xian turned to glance at Dao Ling and Shirtian. At this moment, their souls were extremely weak as well. They'd used up everything they had in that battle. Even if the four of them fought with their lives on the line, they still couldn't defeat a time immortal. When he thought up to this point, Yixian suddenly took out the spear he obtained from Qinguan and had it devour 3 million universe veins. Fearing that it wouldn't be enough, he added another 2 million. 5 million universe veins. He had no other choice but to use the spear. Yixian gazed at the spear in his hand with a calm expression. The reason he hadn't used the spear in the beginning was because its recoil was too terrifying. The more universe veins it fed, the more powerful it would be. However, the recoil would be even more terrifying as well. 5 million universe veins? That recoil was absolutely not something he could withstand right now. Yixian suddenly said, "Dao Ling Shun, take Tianqi and go to the Celestial Treasure Pavilion." The Celestial Treasure Pavilion? Dao Ling was stunned, and then he said, "What about you?" Yixian smiled, "I'll stay behind and bring up the rear." Dao Ling immediately shook his head. "No, you can't defeat him." Yixian said, "I have a way to deal with him." Dao Ling shook his head again. He was about to speak when Yixian suddenly turned around and roared furiously, "Cut the crap! Leave quickly!" Dao Ling was stunned, and then he said angrily, "Why are you being so fierce? My father hasn't been fierce to me, so I won't leave. Beat me to death." Yixian said angrily, "Do you believe that I'll ask my sister to beat you up?" Dao Ling's expression froze. "Don't call me sister if you dare." Yixian shook his head. "All of you leave first. Trust me, I can escape." Shitian shook his head slightly. "Brother Yi, we aren't stupid." Yixian fell silent. In the distance, the book sage suddenly said, "Are you done chatting?" Yixian suddenly looked at the book sage. The next moment, he immediately retreated, but his gun was still in place. He suddenly realized, why did he have to hold a gun with his hand? Couldn't he use his mind to shoot? The small gun was speechless. Yixian suddenly said, "Retreat." As soon as he finished speaking, he led Dao Ling and the rest to retreat. At the same time, he used his mind to activate the small gun. Boom! A beam of white light suddenly burst out from the muzzle. Almost instantly Yixian's eyes opened wide, and his entire soul trembled violently. Then he fell straight down. At this moment, he felt his mind go blank. It's over. This was the last thought in Yixian's mind. This was because he realized that even if he used his mind to shoot, his divine soul would still suffer from the backlash. It's over. In the distance, when the book sage saw the beam of white light, his pupils suddenly shrank. He raised his arms to block it, and at the same time, an invisible barrier enveloped him. The beam of white light arrived. Rumble! The invisible barrier in front of the sage of book exploded. At the same time, the sage of book retreated hundreds of thousands of meters. As soon as he stopped, his body shattered as well. The book sage was dumbfounded. What the hell was this? In the distance, Dao Ling and Shitian had already taken Yixian and Tianqi and disappeared into the starry sky. The book sage was still dumbfounded. That spear strike had directly injured him. After a moment, the book sage's expression suddenly became ferocious. "Pass down my order. The Yuan lineage will pursue and kill these four." At the end of the starry sky, Dao Ling hugged Yixian's soul and said with a trembling voice, "Brother Yi, wake up." Yixian's eyes were slightly closed, and his aura was getting weaker and weaker. Dao Ling panicked. "Brother Yi, you wake up?" Still no response. Dao Ling turned to look at Shitian. Shitian said in a low voice, "He suffered from the backlash. Now that he has lost consciousness, we must find a place to heal him." Dao Ling said in a low voice, "Go to the Celestial Treasure Pavilion?" Shitian said softly, "The Celestial Treasure Pavilion doesn't want to get involved in this. It's not nice of us to go to them again and again." Dao Ling was silent. Shitian said in a low voice, "Go to the Shi clan. I will ask my ancestor for help." Dao Ling immediately shook his head. "If you go to the Shi clan, you will implicate the entire Shi clan." After a moment of silence, Shitian said, "He is a friend. We can't leave him in the lurch. Soon, the three of them brought Yi Xian to the Shi clan. As soon as they arrived, Shi Qian's voice resounded in the sky above the Shi clan. All Shi clan members, except for the elders, leave. Stay far away. Without my order, no one is allowed to return to the clan. If the Shi clan is destroyed today, none of the Shi clan members outside will be allowed to seek revenge. P.S. I've been studying in Beijing these few days, and I've met many experts. Apart from me, do you like other authors? I know, definitely not. 7017K. Chapter 2264. Under Shi Qian's summons, the experts of the Shi clan emerged from their secluded cultivation. At the same time, the members of the Shi clan were led to various parts of the universe. Shi clan, Ancestral Shrine. At this moment, Yi Xian was lying silently on the ground while a group of Shi clan experts were healing him. Looking at Yi Xian in front of them, the strong ones from the Shi clan all had mixed feelings. Not long ago, the Shi clan and Yi Xian had been mortal enemies. Yet now, the Shi clan was going all out to save this fellow. Fate really made fools of people. Some of the top experts of the Shi clan had solemn expressions, because they'd realized the severity of the situation. Shi Tian arrived before a statue and bowed slightly. Ancestor. The statue suddenly cracked open, and then a middle-aged man appeared before Shi Tian. All the experts of the Shi clan hurriedly knelt down. Shi Tian. This man was the ancestor of the Shi clan, and he was the founder of the Shi clan. Shi Tian gazed at Shi Tian for a long time before smiling. You're very outstanding. Very outstanding. Shi Tian spoke solemnly. Ancestor, my Shi clan is in danger of annihilation. I wish to ask for your help. Shi Tian suddenly looked outside and spoke softly. The time immortal? Shi Tian turned around, and his face sank. The Sage of Book had arrived. Outside the Shi clan, the Sage of Book looked down at the Shi clan below, and his gaze descended onto Shi Tian with a frown. Shi Tian looked at Shi Tian and smiled. Little fellow, you've caused quite a bit of trouble. Shi Tian spoke solemnly. Can Ancestor defeat this person? Shi Tian shook his head. I can't. Shi Tian's face fell when he heard this. Meanwhile, Shi Tian spoke again. Even though I can't defeat him, I can delay him. Delay him? Shi Tian was stunned. Shi Tian suddenly turned to glance at Dao Ling and Tianqi, and he frowned. Possessors of the karmic Dao? Shi Tian nodded. They are my friends. Friends? Shi Tian's expression instantly became strange. You? Are friends? Shi Tian nodded. Yes. Shi Tian shook his head. How strange. You actually became friends. How interesting. Shi Tian lightly smiled. It's a long story. Xianxia suddenly turned his head to look at the distant Yi Xian lying on the ground. Is he also? Shi Tian nodded. Xianxia said in a soft voice. His injuries are extremely serious. It is useless for you to heal him like this. Shi Tian hurriedly said, Does Ancestor have a way? Xianxia was silent for a moment before he said, Let him go to the soul recovery pool. I and some of my clansmen have left some divine souls there. Let him swallow them to restore his divine soul. Shi Tian was slightly stunned when he heard this, and then he turned to look at Shi Qian. Shi Qian laughed bitterly. I don't know as well. That should only be known by the clan leader. Xianxia laughed and said, Indeed. When I left back then, I left behind an ancestral rule that only the clan leader could enter this place. The previous clan leader. Did something happen to our clan? All the experts of the Shi clan fell silent when they heard this. Xianxia shook his head and smiled. Forget it. I don't care about that anymore. In any case, the current clan leader is very good. As he spoke, he suddenly pointed to the right. The mountain wall in the distance suddenly split open, and a passage appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Shi Tian immediately said, Elder Shi Qian, quickly bring Brother Yi into it. Shi Qian carried Yi Xian and disappeared on the spot. At this moment, Xianxia raised his head and looked at the distant Sage of Book. He smiled faintly and said, I don't know how long I can last. Take care of yourselves. As his voice fell, he suddenly disappeared on the spot. A terrifying force suddenly swept towards the sky and the Sage of Book. The Sage of Book was expressionless. I will deal with this person first. Master Yun, Tribulation Lord, you too deal with the others. As he finished speaking, he directly disappeared on the spot. Rumble. Soon, a terrifying explosion suddenly came from the depths of the distant starry sky. Below, the Tribulation Lord and Master Yun looked at Dao Ling and the other two. The Tribulation Lord suddenly disappeared on the spot, and a terrifying divine lightning suddenly descended from the sky, sweeping towards Dao Ling and the other two. As soon as the powerful lightning appeared, the entire sky changed color and trembled violently. Below, Dao Ling's eyes flashed with malevolence. Leave this shit to me. As his voice fell, he suddenly stomped his right foot and shot up into the sky. Rumble. The moment Dao Ling shot up into the sky, a terrifying Dharma body of all elephants appeared behind him. At the same time, his physical body directly burned. When he chose to burn his physical body, the Dharma body of all elephants actually burned along with him. Facing the Tribulation Lord, Dao Ling was very clear that he had to fight with all his might. Otherwise, he would be at an absolute disadvantage. If he fought with all his might, there was still a chance of survival. On the other side, the moment the Tribulation Lord and Dao Ling attacked, Tianqi also shot up into the sky and headed straight for Master Yun. His previous enemy was Master Yun. Now that the two of them met, it was as if two enemies had met, and their eyes were exceptionally red. Master Yun coldly looked at Tianqi, who was charging at him, and the next moment, he suddenly disappeared on the spot. A terrifying force descended from the sky, and the entire sky was directly torn apart. Below, Shirtian looked into the distance. Not far away, the space-time there suddenly split open, and a youth slowly walked out. The youth wore a long robe, and his black hair was combed vertically behind his head. In his left hand he held a sheathed long saber. He walked very calmly. Shirtian looked at the youth with a calm expression. He knew that the youth in front of him was his opponent. The youth suddenly said softly, "The fate of the great path." As he spoke, he shook his head, and a hint of disdain appeared at the corner of his mouth. A true monster does not need the recognition of the great path's brush. Why do they need its bonus? As his voice fell, he suddenly leaped up and slashed with his saber. A wave of saber light suddenly tore the entire sky apart. Below, Shirtian's eyes narrowed slightly, and his right foot suddenly tapped lightly. Boom! Shirtian shot up into the sky and directly met the wave of saber light. Soon, the entire sky and earth began to be destroyed inch by inch. On the other side, a youth and an old man were quietly watching everything in front of them. This youth was the Evil Lord. The Evil Lord said softly, "Master, they finally started fighting with the Immortal Mausoleum." Beside the Evil Lord, the old man said excitedly, "This is naturally great news." The Evil Lord fell silent. The old man said in a deep voice, "You want to help them?" The Evil Lord nodded. "It's not good to benefit from it." The old man was somewhat puzzled. "What's not good about it? Isn't it great to let these people and the Immortal Mausoleum fight to the death?" After a moment of silence, the Evil Lord shook his head. The old man was puzzled. Let them exhaust the Immortal Mausoleum. Regardless of whether they die or the Immortal Mausoleum is exhausted, it will only be beneficial to us. The Evil Lord shook his head again. "You can't think like that. Master, if they die, then we will no longer have a powerful ally. At that time, facing this terrifying Immortal Mausoleum, our evil spirit race will no longer have a chance to rise again." As he spoke, he looked into the distance and softly said, "Today, if we watch from the sidelines and don't lend a helping hand in the future, when the Celestial Mausoleum deals with us, who will help us?" The old man fell silent. The Evil Lord looked at the Tribulation Lord in the distance, and his gaze gradually turned cold. "With our evil spirit race's strength, we will never have a chance to take revenge in this lifetime. Since that's the case, why not take a gamble?" As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly clenched his right hand, and a blood-colored spear suddenly appeared in his hand. The old man's expression changed drastically. He hurriedly said, Don't be rash. If we attack now, it will be equivalent to exposing us in advance. The evil lord shook his head. If we don't help now, it will only be icing on the cake in the future. Do you think they want it? As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly soared into the sky and headed straight for the Tribulation Lord in the distance. The old man's face instantly turned pale upon seeing this. In the distant sky, the Tribulation Lord, who was fighting with Dao Ling, suddenly changed his expression. In the next moment he suddenly turned his head. At that moment, a spear pierced through the air. The Tribulation Lord's eyes narrowed. He waved his right hand, and a divine lightning barrier appeared in front of him. Rumble! A bolt of lightning suddenly exploded, and the Tribulation Lord was forced to retreat nearly 10,000 feet. After stopping, the Tribulation Lord raised his head and looked at the evil lord in the distance with a cold glint in his eyes. Remnant of the evil spirit race. The evil lord chuckled. Come, let's continue. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished on the spot. A ray of red spear light suddenly tore through the battlefield, and in the next moment, the tip of the spear had arrived before the Tribulation Lord. The Tribulation Lord's pupils constricted. He suddenly leaped up and smashed his fist forward. Countless bolts of lightning rained down from his fist. Rumble! Countless rays of spear light and lightning suddenly exploded and shot towards the surroundings. In an instant, the entire expanse of the starry sky was shattered into pieces. Meanwhile, Dao Ling suddenly charged towards the Tribulation Lord. At the same time, another ray of spear light slashed towards the Tribulation Lord. Boom! The Tribulation Lord retreated explosively for over 100 kilometers. As soon as he stopped, Dao Ling and the evil lord charged towards him once more. Boom! The Tribulation Lord retreated explosively once more. It didn't take long for the Tribulation Lord to be suppressed by the evil lord and Dao Ling. Over 100 kilometers away, the Tribulation Lord had just stopped, and he suddenly spoke in a ferocious voice. You want to bully me with numbers? As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his right hand, and a command token suddenly shot into the sky before vanishing into the horizon. Dao Ling and the evil lord frowned at the sight of this. It was obvious that the Tribulation Lord had called for help. Immortal Mausoleum. The evil monarch was silent and his face became a little dignified. Dao Ling glanced at the evil prince and asked, What's your name? The evil monarch said, Evil spirit race, evil monarch. Dao Ling shook his head. Never heard of it. The evil monarch. Dao Ling sized up the evil monarch and said, The Tribulation Lord is calling for help. Did someone call you? If you do, call for more. The evil monarch hesitated for a moment and then said, No. Dao Ling was silent. There was no one to call. What a pain in the ass. At this moment, a huge vortex suddenly appeared in the depths of the starry sky. Then, several terrifying auras suddenly swept down from the vortex. Dao Ling said in a deep voice, Their men are here. The evil prince suddenly turned around and left. Dao Ling looked at the evil prince in shock. Where are you going? The evil monarch hesitated and then said, I'm going to the toilet, Dao Ling. 7017K. Chapter 2265. Hearing the evil prince's words, Dao Ling's face darkened. What F*** King Toilet? This fellow was trying to escape. Dao Ling quickly pulled the evil prince back. Brother, you can't leave. If you leave now, the Immortal Mausoleum won't let you go. You're going to die anyway. What's the difference between dying sooner or later? Hearing this, the evil prince was speechless. Wasn't it better to die later? Meanwhile, a middle-aged man and two black-robed figures appeared here. The evil prince and Dao Ling's faces darkened when they saw the three middle-aged men. All three of them were time controllers. Although he wasn't a time immortal, a time controller was still terrifying. On their side, not only were their cultivation levels suppressed, but they were also suppressed in terms of numbers. How to fight? Dao Ling was in despair. The evil monarch's expression was extremely solemn. One should know that in the depths of the starry sky, there was a time immortal. The ancestor of the Shi clan was only a wisp of his soul. He couldn't delay the time immortal for long. The Chronomon Immortal didn't even need to worry about the Chronomon Immortal. All the time controllers here were more than enough to annihilate them. Their strengths were seriously unequal. At this time, the Tribulation Lord looked at Dao Ling and Xie Jun with a malevolent expression. What? Didn't you want to gang up on me? Come on. Dao Ling's expression was calm. Tribulation Master, if you have the ability, then fight me one-on-one. What's the point of ganging up on me? The Tribulation Lord glared at Dao Ling. How can you be so shameless? Dao Ling. The Tribulation Lord suddenly disappeared. A bolt of lightning flashed across the battlefield. In the distance, Dao Ling narrowed his eyes slightly. He gently twirled his right hand, and a terrifying power quickly gathered in his right fist. In the next moment, he charged forward and threw a punch at the Culpa Lord. Rumble! A bolt of lightning suddenly exploded, and a figure frantically retreated from the starry sky. It was Dao Ling. After Dao Ling stopped, a trickle of blood slowly flowed out from the corner of his mouth, and the Culpa Lord charged towards him again. A ferocious look flashed across Dao Ling's eyes. Suddenly, he became illusory. Boom! With the help of the primeval god stone, the aura of his soul suddenly skyrocketed. A moment later, he transformed into an all-manifestation that charged towards the Tribulation Lord. Elf fight head-on. Rumble! A loud bang suddenly resounded between the heavens and the earth, and two figures retreated explosively at the same time. When Dao Ling stopped, his corporeal body was completely annihilated. Only his soul was left. Furthermore, his soul was extremely illusory. He had expended a lot of energy just now. He could no longer bear it. In the distance, the evil prince was silent. He couldn't help because there were three terrifying auras locking onto him. As long as he tried to help, the other party would attack as well. In the distance, the Tribulation Lord glanced at his chest. There was a deep imprint of a palm, left behind by Dao Ling just now. That palm imprint had already shattered his internal organs. After a moment of silence, the Culpa Lord looked at Dao Ling. He had to admit that he was still somewhat shocked. One should know that his cultivation level was one level higher than Dao Ling's. Furthermore, he was once a genius amongst geniuses. Otherwise, he wouldn't have become the Lord of all tribulations. However, he didn't expect Dao Ling to be able to fight against him for so long. However, it was time to end this. The Tribulation Lord opened his right hand, and a bolt of lightning suddenly appeared in his hand. In the distance, Dao Ling took a deep breath. A look of helplessness flashed in his eyes. How helpless? He had done his best. However, most of the time, you won't necessarily win just because you put your life on the line. There was still a gap between them. If he was given a little more time, he was confident that he could surpass the Culpa Lord. However, he didn't have that much time. It was time to end this. Dao Ling looked at the Culpa Lord. Although he was unwilling, it was indeed time to end this. Dao Ling suddenly turned towards the Shi clan and said softly, "Brother Yi, if you survive, please help me take care of my clansmen." As soon as he finished speaking, his soul trembled violently and started burning. Soul ignition. This was his last resort. Bang. As Dao Ling started burning his soul, a mysterious gas slowly seeped out from his body. The evil lord's pupils constricted when he saw this. The karmic luck of the great Dao. Dao Ling suddenly soared into the sky. He looked towards the Shi clan and roared with laughter. "Brother Yi, I'll help you one last time." As soon as he finished speaking, all the karmic luck within his body surged out and arrived at the Shi clan's secret realm before surging into Yi Xian's body. In the distance, the Culpa Lord's expression turned unsightly. "Have you gone mad? You've actually given all your karmic luck of the Grand Dao to Yi Xian." Dao Ling spoke fiercely, "It's none of your fucking business." The Culpa Lord was infuriated, and a ferocious expression appeared on his face. "You're dead without the karmic luck of the Grand Dao." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished on the spot. Bang! A terrifying bolt of tribulation lightning suddenly swept through the surroundings, and it shot straight towards Dao Ling. Dao Ling suddenly roared with laughter, "Bring it on!" As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished on the spot. A ray of red light tore through the surroundings. It was soul ignition. Rumble. Suddenly, a ray of red light and lightning erupted in the sky, and then the Culpa Lord was blasted over 30 kilometers away. On the other hand, Dao Ling had stopped on the spot. However, his soul had become completely ethereal like a strand of smoke. His soul had been obliterated. The evil lord's pupils constricted when he witnessed this scene, and he tightened his grip on the spear in his right hand. He knew that Dao Ling was gone. At this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly shot into the sky from the secret realm in the distance. In the next moment, a ray of sword light descended in front of Dao Ling. It was Yi Xian. Yi Xian hurriedly supported Dao Ling, but he was stunned when his hand came into contact with Dao Ling's soul. Because his hand had passed through Dao Ling's soul. Now, Dao Ling's soul was almost gone. Yi Xian was horrified. He was about to speak when Dao Ling suddenly shook his head. I can't. This time I really can't. Yi Xian suddenly roared furiously, Qing Xian. Xiaohun. Xiaohun. However, there was no response. Yi Xian's face instantly turned ghastly pale. Qing. There was still no response. Dao Ling suddenly said with a trembling voice, Brother Yi, the only thing I care about is my clansmen. If you can get through this, please help me take care of my clansmen. Thank you. As soon as he finished speaking, his soul quickly disappeared. Yi Xian was extremely horrified. He hurriedly said, I beg you, help me save him. However, there was no response. Yi Xian wanted to say something, but Dao Ling, who was about to disappear, shook his head. Brother Yi, if there's an afterlife, Before he finished speaking, his soul suddenly disappeared completely. Looking at the emptiness in front of him, Yi Xian's mind went blank, as though he was struck by lightning. Gone. Dao Ling was really gone. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly began to panic. For the first time, Qing did not respond to him. When Qing did not respond to him, he experienced despair for the first time. Without Qing he really could not reverse many things. Pain. His heart had never been in such pain, nor had he been in such despair. Yi Xian suddenly laughed crazily. Once upon a time, he had arrogantly said that Qing should not suppress Daoist. He wanted to walk the path of the future alone. But the result? The result was that without Qing suppressing Daoist, Yi Xian was nothing. Yi Xian's laughter became louder and louder. Gradually, the blood in his body surged crazily. Waves of terrifying killing intent swept around. In the distance, the Tribulation Lord looked at Yi Xian and frowned. Do you think that going crazy will work? Yi Xian suddenly looked at the Tribulation Lord. His eyes were like a sea of blood. He said crazily, Great Dao Luck? Great Dao Luck. It's all because of this damned Great Dao Luck? Boom! Suddenly, the Great Dao Luck within his body surged out. In the next moment, countless Great Dao Luck surged towards Shutian, Tianqi, and the evil monarch in the distance. At this moment, everyone was shocked. Because they found that Yi Xian's Great Dao Luck was too much. It was more than 10 times more than Dao Ling's. And now, Yi Xian took the initiative to give his Great Dao Luck to Tianqi, the evil monarch, and Shutian. He didn't want the Great Dao Luck anymore. In the distance, the Tribulation Lord stared at Yi Xian. How is this possible? At this moment, he was also shocked. Because he found that the Great Dao Luck on Yi Xian was even more than the one in the Immortal Mausoleum. What did this mean? It meant that Yi Xian, who had so much Great Dao Luck, was protected by Daoist. Why would Daoist protect Yi Xian like this? Of course, this was not the main point. The main point was that Yi Xian took the initiative to disperse the Great Dao Luck. The Tribulation Lord stared at Yi Xian. You're courting death. Yi Xian nodded. You're right. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly disappeared. A blood-colored sword light slashed at the Tribulation Lord in the distance. He had completely gone mad. At this moment, Yi Xian no longer had any rationality. Moreover, he didn't have the profound azure sword. In the past, with the profound azure sword, he could still maintain his last trace of sanity. But now, without the profound azure sword, he no longer had any rationality. Seeing the blood-colored sword light slash over, the Tribulation Lord's pupils shrank. He found that the power of this sword was several times stronger than before. What the hell? The Tribulation Lord was shocked. How could this guy's strength grow to this extent after he went mad? Without thinking too much, the Tribulation Lord punched out with his right hand. In an instant, countless lightning surged out of his fist. Rumble! A blood-colored sword light and lightning suddenly erupted in front of the Tribulation Lord and Yi Xian. In the next moment, a figure retreated. It was the Tribulation Lord. As soon as the Tribulation Lord stopped, another sword light slashed over. Rumble! The Tribulation Lord wasn't even able to react before he was slashed over 30 kilometers away. As soon as he stopped moving, his body shattered into pieces, and only his soul remained. The Tribulation Lord was utterly stunned. What's going on? Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot, and his sword slashed straight at the Tribulation Lord's soul. In the distance, the pupils of the Culpa Lord suddenly shrank. At this moment, a terrifying force suddenly hit Yi Xian's sword. Bang! Yi Xian was blasted back. Meanwhile, Sage of Book appeared in front of the Tribulation Lord. Sage of Book gazed at Yi Xian. You dispersed the karmic luck of your Grand Dao. Without Daoist's protection, you'll definitely die. As soon as he finished speaking, he slowly clenched his right hand, and a terrifying force condensed within it. In the distance, Yi Xian opened his right hand, and the primeval divine sword suddenly vanished. In the next moment, the blood within his body surged, and then countless strands of blood surged out from within him and converged into a sword in his palm. Blood as a sword. Bang! In the next moment, the sword in Yi Xian's hand started burning. Bloodline ignition. Presently, he had nothing but desperately fighting for his life. P.S. Does anyone have anything to say to me during today's study? 7017K. Chapter 2266. The Sage of Book frowned when he saw Yi Xian ignite his soul. Soul ignition. After Yi Xian chose to ignite his soul, he noticed that Yi Xian's aura had suddenly risen explosively. At this moment, Yi Xian's aura wasn't normal anymore. At this moment, in the distance, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. A blood-red ray of light suddenly slashed down towards the Sage of Book. The Sage of Book clenched his right fist, and then he punched forward. A strand of terrifying force surged out from his fist. Rumble! An expanse of light shattered as the Sage of Book was blasted over 100 kilometers away. On the other hand, Yi Xian was blasted over 100 kilometers away as well. But in the next moment, he charged towards the Sage of Book once more. In the distance, Sage Shu stopped and looked at his right hand. There was a deep sword scar on his right fist. Yi Xian had actually injured him. A wisp of ferocity flashed through the Sage of Book's eyes, and then he suddenly vanished on the spot and smashed his fist towards Yi Xian's head. When the fist arrived before Yi Xian's head, Yi Xian actually didn't dodge at all, and he just slashed his sword towards the Sage of Book's throat. Bang! Yi Xian instantly retreated by 30 kilometers, and his body exploded apart as soon as he stopped moving. Meanwhile, the Sage of Book's throat suddenly split open, and then a strand of blood sprayed into the surroundings. After that, his body was obliterated. Both of their bodies were obliterated at the same time. The Sage of Book's expression was extremely unsightly. The reason he'd exchanged his body for Yi Xian's was because he felt that Yi Xian's sword couldn't possibly break through his body. However, he'd underestimated the blood-red sword in Yi Xian's hand. Yi Xian's soul was still burning in the distance, and his aura was rising madly as well. Besides burning his soul, his bloodline energy was providing him with an endless supply of bloodline energy. That was why he was able to fight a time immortal right now. On the other side, the Sage of Book slowly clenched his right fist, and it didn't take long for his body to start reforming. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. A blood-red sword light tore through the sky. In the distance, a wisp of savagery flashed through the eyes of the Book Sage. He suddenly charged forward, and a terrifying wave of energy shook space apart as it collided with the sword light. Fight head-on. Facing Yi Xian, he, as a time immortal, had no reason to retreat. Rumble. In the distant space-time, a blood-red sword light and a terrifying force suddenly erupted. In an instant, the space-time in an area of a few million meters was directly obliterated and turned pitch black. In this pitch-black space and time, two figures frantically retreated. It was Yi Xian and the book sage. As soon as Yi Xian stopped, he slowly closed his eyes. In the next moment, a sword suddenly appeared above the head of the book sage in the distance. Sever the future. The sudden attack caused Sage Shu's face to change slightly. However, he reacted quickly and dodged the attack with a sidestep. The sword pierced through the sky and disappeared into the starry sky. But in the next moment, hundreds of swords suddenly appeared around him. Sage Book's expression instantly changed drastically. Because these hundreds of swords didn't appear at the same time, and each one was slightly later than the last. Slashing the future. The book sage was shocked and didn't dare to be careless. He raised his hands and a thick ancient book suddenly flew out from within him. In the next moment, rays of violet light surged out from the ancient book. At the same time, a mysterious and strange sound resounded in the surroundings. The sound was extremely old and seemed to come from ancient times. Rumble. Terrifying explosions resounded incessantly around the book sage. Just at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. The book sage's pupils constricted, and he suddenly charged forward and punched out. Once again. Rumble. Along with a deafening explosion, Yi Xian retreated over 30 kilometers away. However, at practically the exact same moment, a few dozen rays of light enveloped the book sage. An instant later, a terrifying force suddenly surged out from the rays of light, and then they were instantly obliterated. After that, the book sage walked out slowly with the ancient book in hand. At this moment, there were no less than a dozen injuries on his body, and it was especially so on his face. That injury had practically torn his entire face apart. The Tribulation Lord, Master Yun, and the others instantly revealed extremely solemn expressions when they witnessed this scene. They hadn't imagined that Yi Xian would actually be able to fight the book sage to such an extent. It was too terrifying. Master Yun spoke in a low voice. He's overexerting himself. The Tribulation Lord nodded. They were very clearly aware that the reason Yi Xian's combat strength had become so ferocious was because Yi Xian had utilized a secret technique to forcefully overexerting himself. So, it would take 15 minutes at most for Yi Xian to exhaust himself to death. The book sage stared fixedly at Yi Xian, and then he suddenly flipped open the ancient book in his hand. In the next moment, an afterimage suddenly flew out from within the ancient book, and then it charged towards Yi Xian. The sound of something tearing apart resounded abruptly. Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes, and a monstrous ocean of blood surged within them as he swiftly drew his sword and slashed. Bang. Along with the sound of something tearing apart and an explosion, Yi Xian was blasted back by the afterimage, and he moved over 30 kilometers back. However, the afterimage had charged over to him again. Moreover, the book sage had vanished on the spot as well. Suddenly Yi Xian raised his head, and then the energy of time in an area of 3 kilometers suddenly converged within him. He'd mobilized the river of time. Yi Xian swiftly drew his sword and slashed. Draw the sword to decide life and death. Yi Xian had overlapped 150,000 strands of energy with this attack. The river of stars in the surroundings was instantly obliterated. Rumble. The afterimage was instantly slashed into pieces by Yi Xian's attack. As for the book sage who'd charged towards Yi Xian, he was blasted over 100 kilometers away. As soon as he stopped moving, Yi Xian appeared in front of him again, and then Yi Xian drew his sword and slashed again. Draw the sword to decide life and death. Bang. An expanse of light instantly enveloped the book sage. Rumble. A world-shaking explosion resounded as the book sage was blasted flying. At practically the exact same moment, a blood-red sword suddenly flew over to the book sage. Rumble. The light from the sword shattered, and the book sage was blasted back once more. This time, his soul had instantly dimmed down. The expressions of the Culpa Lord and the others instantly changed violently when they witnessed this scene. "We're in danger." The Culpa Lord was about to act when Master Yun stopped him. Master Yun looked towards the distance and spoke softly, "Only the book sage can fight him right now. We'll be courting death if we act against him." The Culpa Lord fell silent. Regardless of whether he was willing or not, he had to admit that Yi Xian's strength had attained the Age Immortal realm, and those beneath the Age Immortal realm weren't a match for Yi Xian. After the book sage was blasted back, he suddenly opened the ancient book in his hand. In the next moment, a strand of terrifying force erupted from within the book, and then countless ancient characters shot into the sky and shot into the starry sky. After that, the ancient characters actually condensed into a huge sword that held an extremely terrifying force within it. A ferocious expression flashed through the book sage's eyes, and then he suddenly charged forward. The huge sword tore through the sky and slashed down towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian clenched the blood-red sword in his right hand. At this moment, his soul was growing more and more illusory. Actually, it wouldn't take another 10 minutes for him to vanish. However, the book sage clearly didn't want to wait that long. Under everyone's gaze, the giant sword streaked across the starry sky and then came to the top of Yi Xian's head. However, to everyone's surprise, Yi Xian did not dodge at all. He just let the sword sink into his head. Everyone was stunned. Rumble. Right at this moment, a terrifying force suddenly swept out from Yi Xian's body. In an instant, the book sage who just arrived in front of Yi Xian was blasted hundreds of kilometers back by this terrifying force. Bang! When the book sage stopped moving, he was stunned, and his eyes were filled with disbelief as he gazed at Yi Xian, whose aura was rising explosively. It wasn't just the book sage, everyone else here was stunned as well. What's going on? Is this fellow devouring that huge sword? Impossible! The book sage gazed at Yi Xian with disbelief in his eyes. That's absolutely impossible. At this moment, in the distance, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. At this moment, his soul, which had been incorporeal, started to solidify. Not only that, but Yi Xian's aura also skyrocketed crazily. Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. A blood-red sword suddenly appeared above the book sage. The book sage's expression instantly changed violently. He opened his right hand, and the ancient book in his hand flew up and transformed into a screen that blocked above his head. Rumble! The sword descended, and the ancient book trembled violently. Immediately after, the powerful force blasted the book sage several tens of thousands of meters away. Yi Xian swept his sword, and the thick ancient book was directly swept before Shirtian in the distance. Shirtian was stunned, and then he put the book away. At this moment, Yi Xian's consciousness had recovered slightly because the energy of the huge sword was truly too terrifying, and it allowed him to faintly show signs of breaking through. Yi Xian raised his head to look at the book sage, and the latter's expression was unsightly to the extreme. "How did you devour my book sword?" "Why?" He'd never understood how Yi Xian could actually devour his book sword. Yi Xian didn't answer, and he suddenly vanished on the spot. The book sage's pupils constricted, and his soul suddenly became illusory. In the next moment, he'd retreated over 30 kilometers away. He didn't choose to go head-on against Yi Xian, because he found Yi Xian's strength was many times stronger than before. Even that ancient book of his could not withstand Yi Xian's strength. Not to mention he was just a soul now. In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot once more, and the book sage vanished as well. He'd retreated over 30 kilometers again, and he'd pulled some distance away from Yi Xian. Yi Xian's eyes closed slowly. The book sage's eyes narrowed slightly. Right at this moment, he suddenly raised his head. In the next moment, the space in the sky suddenly split apart, and then a golden screen of light swept down from the depths of the starry sky. A middle-aged man walked down slowly from within the golden screen of light. The time immortal. The book sage instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he saw this middle-aged man, and then he raised his head to look at Yi Xian. "My people are here." As he spoke, A wisp of a savage smile arose on the corners of his mouth. What's the point of a one-on-one battle? This is an era where people compete in numbers. Is that so? Right at this moment, an icy cold voice suddenly resounded from the depths of the boundless starry sky. Compete in numbers? Yi Xian's figure trembled slightly when he heard this voice. Chapter 2267. Who is it? The Sage of Book's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked towards the starry sky in the distance. A woman was walking over slowly. It was none other than Dong Linen. The next moment, Dong Linen showed up in front of Yi Xian. When he saw Yi Xian, who was covered in blood, Dong Linen's eyes suddenly welled up with tears. Dong Linen hugged Yi Xian tightly and spoke in a trembling voice. Xian. Yi Xian spoke softly. Mother. Dong Linen suddenly turned to look at the Sage of Book, and her peerlessly beautiful face was extremely ferocious at this moment. So you want to compete in numbers? The Sage of Book looked at Dong Linen and was about to speak. Suddenly, a figure descended from the sky. In the next moment, the Sage of Book's pupils constricted, and he was just about to retreat when a hand clamped down on his throat. Bang! A terrifying force locked onto the Sage of Book, and he couldn't move at all. The Sage of Book's eyes were filled with terror as he looked at the old man. You? What realm are you? The old man's face was emotionless as he turned to look at Dong Linen. Dong Linen's face was expressionless. Letting him die now would be letting him off too easily. The old man nodded slightly and didn't kill him. Meanwhile, the Time Immortal who had just arrived spoke abruptly. You are... His pupils constricted before he could finish speaking, and he swiftly turned around. Meanwhile, a ray of light suddenly slashed towards him. The Time Moon Immortal was greatly shocked in his heart. He suddenly raised his right hand and a terrifying time energy swept out from his body. Rumble! The ray of light was blocked, but in the next moment, another ray of light slashed down. Bang! The terrifying time energy shattered abruptly, and then the Time Immortal retreated explosively. As soon as he stopped moving, a sword was placed against his neck. They were stunned. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned. A Time Immortal was subdued just like that? What kind of terrifying expert is this? The Time Immortal looked at the swordsman in disbelief. You? Who the hell are you? The swordsman's expression was indifferent. He did not speak but turned to look at Dong Linen. Dong Linen was expressionless. Let him live first. Swordsman nodded. Dong Linen turned to look at Yi Xian. The coldness in her eyes instantly turned gentle as she asked softly, Are you all right? Yi Xian was silent. Dong Linen felt a pang in his heart. I shouldn't have listened to your father. Yi Xian said softly, Father is not wrong. Before this, I thought I was extraordinary. I thought that without him and Xianxia, I could still make a name for myself. But the cruel reality tells me that without him and Xianxia, I can do nothing. Dong Linen shook his head. It's not your fault. Your father's enemy was not as perverted as you think. You are wrong to compare yourself to him. Yi Xian shook his head slightly, a pained expression on his face. He didn't say anything else. Dao Ling. At the thought of Dao Ling disappearing from this world forever, his heart felt like it was being pricked by needles. Dong Linen said softly, They don't care about you, but I do. After saying that, she turned to look at the leader of the group, Sage of Book. You are from the Immortal Mausoleum. Sage of Book's expression was incomparably solemn. You are. Dong Linen was expressionless. I am his mother. Sage of Book glanced at Yi Xian and was stunned. This guy's mother? Dong Linen suddenly said, To the Immortal Mausoleum. Lead the way. Lead the way. Sage of Book's expression changed drastically. What are you doing? Dong Linen looked at Sage of Book with a cold expression. I said lead the way. You don't understand? Sage of Book's expression was extremely ugly. This woman knew about the Immortal Mausoleum, but she still went there. What did this mean? It meant that she was not afraid of the Immortal Mausoleum. Thinking of this, cold sweat dripped from Sage of Book's forehead. At this time, Dong Linen said again, Lead the way. Just as Sage of Book was about to speak, he suddenly felt his throat tighten and his soul became illusory. Sage of Book was greatly shocked. He hurriedly said, "I will lead the way." He knew that if he dared to shake his head, he would be erased in an instant. After cultivating for so long to reach time immortal, he was naturally unwilling to be erased just like that. Under Sage of Book's lead, everyone stood up and headed towards the immortal mausoleum. Tianqi, Shitian, and Xiejun followed closely behind. Along the way, Yixian looked into the distance in silence. No one knew what he was thinking. Dong Linen stood beside Yixian and said softly, "Are you angry?" Yixian shook his head. "No." Dong Linen sighed softly. She gently rubbed Yixian's head and did not say anything else. At this time, Tianqi suddenly walked in front of Yixian. He took out a piece of meat and handed it to Yixian. Yixian looked at Tianqi. Tianqi just looked at him without saying a word. Yixian was stunned for a long time. Then he took the meat and started gnawing on it. At the side, Shitian suddenly said softly, "Brother, your great Dao karmic luck." Yixian shook his head, "I don't want it. You guys keep it." Shitian shook his head, "It's yours." "You?" Yixian looked at Shitian, "You keep it." Shitian was silent. He could feel that Yixian really did not care about this great Dao karmic luck. At this time, Dong Linen suddenly said, "They are your friends?" Yixian nodded. Dong Linen was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Elder June." As his voice fell, the swordsman old man suddenly appeared beside Dong Linen. Dong Linen said softly, "Give the three of them some pointers." The swordsman old man nodded slightly, "Okay." After saying that, he turned to look at Shitian, Tianqi, and Jun Xie. "Follow me." Shitian and Jun Xie looked at each other, and then they hurriedly followed. This swordsman old man had almost killed Time Moon Immortal with a single sword strike. He was a super big shot. At this moment, Shitian suddenly stopped and turned to look at Tianqi. "Tianqi, what are you doing?" Tianqi took out the meat and continued to chew. Obviously, he had no interest in the pointers. In his eyes, there was only meat. Seeing that Tianqi did not move, Shitian immediately glared at him, and then he hurriedly walked over to Tianqi and pulled him away. At the side, Sage Shu and the others had extremely ugly expressions. They knew that they had offended a superpower. This time, it was a big deal. Dong Linen ignored them, and Sage Shu and the others did not dare to run. Running was the same as courting death. As Dong Linen and the others left, within the primeval shrine, the primeval god tree rushed into the primeval shrine. A moment later, crazy laughter suddenly resounded. This laughter belonged to the primeval god race patriarch, Primeval Yuan. Primeval Yuan laughed even louder. He had gambled correctly. This time, he had gambled correctly. This youth's background was truly extraordinary. There was hope for the primeval race to return to Primeval City. As he laughed, tears flowed down Primeval Yuan's cheeks. Those were bitter tears. Not long after, Dong Linen and the others entered an unknown star field. This star field was boundless, and there were experts flying around from time to time. Their auras were extremely strong, but there were very few time immortals. Immortal Mausoleum Cosmos. The Immortal Mausoleum occupied a cosmos. When everyone entered the Immortal Mausoleum Cosmos, a terrifying aura directly locked onto Yixian and the others. Dong Linen frowned, "Kill them." As her voice fell, an old man beside her suddenly disappeared. The next moment, the space-time at the end of the distant starry sky suddenly exploded. Then, a mournful scream suddenly rang out. Boom! At this moment, the entire Immortal Mausoleum Cosmos was shocked. An enemy was invading? Soon, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Dong Linen and the others. When this old man saw Sage Shu and the others, he frowned. "Sage Shu." As he said this, he seemed to have discovered something. His pupils suddenly shrank. "You," Sage Shu nodded, "inform the Tomb Lord." "Tomb Lord?" The old man was shocked. He did not dare to hesitate and quickly turned to leave. He knew that this matter was not simple. Dong Linen suddenly turned to look at Yixian and said softly, How do you want to deal with it? After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, Kill them. Kill them. Dong Linen nodded, Okay. As her voice fell, she suddenly took out a token. The next moment, the token shot into the sky and disappeared into the starry sky. At this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared. This person was the Immortal Mausoleum's tomb lord, Dao Ming. Dao Ming's gaze fell on Dong Linen and he frowned because he had never seen Dong Linen before. He basically knew all the top experts and top forces in the known universe, but he had never seen Dong Linen and the others before. Where did they come from? Dao Ming frowned slightly. Dong Linen's face remained emotionless. There's no need to waste your breath. Elder Jun, Elder Gu, kill them. Kill anyone you see. As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Jun suddenly transformed into a ray of light that charged forward. A sword howl resounded throughout the Tomb of Immortals. A wisp of ferocity flashed through Dao Ming's eyes when he saw Elder Jun attack. Do you think my Tomb of Immortals is easy to bully? As soon as he finished speaking, numerous terrifying auras suddenly shot into the sky from the depths of the starry sky behind him. They were top-rate experts that surpassed the time-immortal realm. Dong Linen's face remained emotionless as she disregarded them. Kill them. As soon as she finished speaking, over 20 powerful auras suddenly surged out from not too far away from her. Every single one of them was actually at the time-immortal realm. Dao Ming's pupils constricted when he witnessed this scene. There are actually so many time immortals here. What sort of power is this? He had no answer. At this moment, he didn't have the time to investigate because both sides had entered into battle. They were directly suppressed. Elder Jun and the others had directly suppressed the top-rate experts of the Tomb of Immortals. No, they were directly bashed up. Dao Ming's eyes were filled with disbelief when he witnessed this scene. Right at this moment, the space in the sky suddenly split apart, and then over a dozen terrifying auras assaulted the Tomb of Immortals. The time-immortal realm. All the experts of the Tomb of Immortals were stunned when they witnessed this scene. Where did these experts come from? Dong Linen suddenly gazed at Sage Shu. Didn't you want to compete in numbers? Come, my Yang clan will compete with all of you. If you think it's not enough, then I'll summon another 1,000 time immortals. Everyone was speechless. P.S. Reader, is a single monthly ticket enough? If it isn't, then I'll give you another 1,000. Green Yuan, it's not enough. Reader, 7,017K. Chapter 2268. 1,000 time immortals? Everyone was stunned when they heard this. Are time immortals as common as cabbages? After all, even the Immortal Mausoleum only had a few dozen time immortals, but this woman actually said that she could summon 1,000. Is she trying to scare me? Dao Ming stared fixedly at Dong Linen. Go on. Go on. He wanted to bet that she couldn't summon 1,000 time immortals. Dong Linen's face remained emotionless when she heard Dao Ming. She opened her palm, and a sword command token suddenly shot into the sky and instantly vanished into the starry sky. After a while, the depths of the starry sky suddenly trembled. In the next moment, a terrifying aura spread out from the depths of the starry sky. In an instant, the starry sky was boiling. Then, terrifying experts appeared in the starry sky. Dao Ming's pupils constricted when he witnessed this scene, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. Haha. Meanwhile, roaring laughter resounded. Do you want to fight? It didn't take long for over 1,000 time immortals to appear in the sky above the Immortal Mausoleum. Everyone here was stunned. Over 1,000 time immortals had really come. Dao Ming and the others had extremely unsightly expressions on their faces, and it was like they'd eaten shit. At this moment, he finally felt slightly panicked. Where did these people come from? As soon as the time immortals arrived, they immediately bowed to Dong Linen, and they didn't conceal their respect for her at all. Meanwhile, Dong Linen suddenly gazed at Yi Xian. My son. Son. Everyone here was slightly stunned, and then they hurriedly bowed. Greetings, young master. Young master. The Tribulation Lord's face instantly turned ghastly pale. Young master. Actually, he knew that they were finished since Dong Linen had appeared. They were completely finished. It was definitely a terrifying, extraordinary power, and the facts proved that he was right. However, he hadn't imagined that Yi Xian's background would actually be so terrifying. 1,000-time immortals. What did that mean? It was too terrifying. It wasn't just the Tribulation Lord, all the experts of the Immortal Mausoleum were stunned. Over 1,000-time immortals. Are they demons? All the time immortal realm experts in the surroundings were sizing up Yi Xian with curiosity. This was the son of the Sword Master. They were naturally curious. Meanwhile, Dao Ming suddenly said, "There's no enmity between my immortal tomb and all of you, so why are all of you acting in this way?" Dong Linen sneered, "No enmity? Are you kidding me? Your immortal mausoleum sent 2-time immortals to kill my son, and you're telling me that we have no enmity between us?" Dao Ming frowned slightly. In the next moment, he looked at Saint of Books and the others. "Did you do this?" Sage of Books' expression was somewhat ugly. Dao Ming's expression instantly turned icy cold when he saw Sage of Books' expression. He glanced coldly at Sage of Book, and then he looked towards the south. "Sir, this was done by an individual from my immortal mausoleum. It has nothing to do with our immortal mausoleum. Don't worry, I will definitely give you an explanation." A wisp of ridicule arose on the corners of Dong Linen's mouth. "Explanation? I don't need you to give me anything too. Slaughter all the experts in the immortal mausoleum." As soon as she finished speaking, the people behind her charged towards the experts from the immortal mausoleum. Seeing this, Dao Ming's expression changed drastically. He wanted to say something, but a sword light had already slashed in front of him. Slaughter. Under the joint attack of over 1,000-time celestial powerhouses, the powerful celestial mausoleum was directly defeated. It didn't even have the strength to put up a fight. Even though the immortal mausoleum activated all of its array formations, it was of no use. What followed was a massacre. A frenzied massacre. Screams rang out in the divine mausoleum. On the other hand, the countenances of Sage Shu and the others were pale, and their eyes were filled with despair. It's over. The immortal mausoleum was finished just like that. In front of this group of experts, the immortal mausoleum had almost no ability to retaliate. Right at this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly shot into the sky from within the mausoleum. It didn't take long for an old man to appear in the sky above the mausoleum. This person was the Immortal Tomb Patriarch. The appearance of the Immortal Tomb's Patriarch ignited hope in the hearts of countless despairing Immortal Tomb experts. Countless experts of the Immortal Mausoleum knelt down and kowtowed. The Patriarch of the Mausoleum Immortal glanced at the battlefield, and his expression instantly darkened. He looked down at the southeast and was about to speak when several afterimages suddenly rushed in front of him. His expression changed drastically, and he flicked his sleeves. Boom! With a loud explosion, the Immortal Mausoleum Patriarch was directly reduced to ashes. Everyone was dumbfounded. He's gone just like that? Dong Linen's face was expressionless. Continue the slaughter. Don't leave a single one alive. All the experts charged directly into the mausoleum. This slaughter continued for an entire 2 hours, and all the experts of the Immortal Tomb universe were annihilated. Of course, the Culpa Lord and Sage Shu hadn't died because Dong Linen wanted them to personally witness how the Yang clan slaughtered the Immortal Tomb. At this moment, Sage Shu and the Culpa Lord's faces were ashen. It's over. Everything is over. Meanwhile, Dong Linen turned around to look at the Culpa Lord and Sage Shu. Didn't you want to compete in numbers and bully others? Sage Shu's face was ashen. Why speak so much? If you want to kill me, then kill me. Beg for mercy? That was impossible, because doing that would only be asking to be humiliated. Dong Linen waved his right hand lightly, and a ray of light suddenly stabbed into the center of Sage Shu's forehead. Bang! Sage Shu's soul shattered and was obliterated. Dong Linen looked at the distant Culpa Lord. The Culpa Lord suddenly looked at Yi Xian and stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Is it interesting? Is it? You're acting like a pig to eat a tiger. First, you're weak, and then you allow the people behind you to clear the battlefield. Is it interesting to do that? Yi Xian glanced at the Culpa Lord and said, "You want to bite me?" The Culpa Lord flared up with rage, but a ray of light shot into the center of his forehead in the next moment. Bang! The Culpa Lord's body exploded apart, and countless bolts of lightning vanished. He'd been completely wiped out. All of a sudden, the surroundings fell silent. The formidable immortal tomb had been destroyed just like that. Meanwhile, an old man walked over to Dong Linen's side, and he spoke in a low voice. One of them escaped. Dong Linen's beautiful brows knit together slightly when she heard this. The old man spoke in a low voice. That person possesses karmic luck of the Grand Tao. Our people underestimated his strength and were killed by him. Dong Linen's expression was calm. Pursue him. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, "There's no need." Dong Linen gazed at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian said, "He'll come looking for me." Dong Linen hesitated for a moment before she nodded, "All right." Yi Xian gazed at Dong Linen and spoke softly, "Mother, help me do one more thing, all right?" Dong Linen rolled her eyes at Yi Xian, "Silly child. There's no need to be so polite to a family member." Yi Xian nodded slightly, and then he turned around, "Senior Primeval Yuan, come on out." Space suddenly split apart in the distance, and then an old man walked out slowly. It was Primeval Yuan. Actually, he'd arrived a very long time ago. He'd personally witnessed the destruction of the immortal tomb. Needless to say, he was shocked to the extreme. It was so powerful that the immortal tomb had actually been destroyed just like that. Who would dare to believe it? Yi Xian gazed at Primeval Yuan and spoke softly, "Senior, ask your clansmen to prepare themselves. We're heading to Primeval City." Primeval Yuan was slightly stunned, and then he hurriedly said, "Thank you, young Master Yi." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Yi Xian gazed off into the distance, and no one knew what he was thinking. Dong Linen spoke softly, "Do you want to come with me?" Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he shook his head. Dong Linen spoke in a low voice, "I don't want you to shoulder too much." Yi Xian shook his head, "There are some things that I have no choice but to shoulder." Dong Linen sighed in his heart. Just as Yi Xian had said, there were some things that he had no choice but to shoulder. To be the second generation for life, or to be the first generation. It was obvious that he chose the latter. Right at this moment, an old man appeared before Dong Linen, and he bowed slightly before placing a spatial ring in front of Dong Linen. "Mistress, the entire immortal tomb's wealth is in this ring." Dong Linen received the spatial ring, and then he turned around and placed it in Yi Xian's hand. "Keep it." Some didn't refuse and directly put the spatial ring away. Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Mother, who are they?" Dong Linen glanced at the experts in the surroundings and smiled. "You're talking about them?" Yi Xian nodded. Dong Linen smiled. "They are people who have received your father's grace, and there are also some who have voluntarily followed your father." "Follower." Yi Xian fell silent. At this moment, Dong Linen suddenly said, "Do you have the confidence to deal with that great Tao Providence contender in the immortal tomb?" Yi Xian nodded. "He will come find me. Let me do it myself." Dong Linen nodded. "Good. I believe in you." At this moment, Primeval Yuan arrived with the ancient race experts. There weren't many, only less than 10,000. The once glorious ancient race only had less than 10,000 people left. It had to be said that this was a bit sad. Primeval Yuan hurriedly walked in front of Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi." Yi Xian nodded slightly. "Lead the way." Primeval Yuan excitedly said, "Thank you." Yi Xian shook his head. "I should be the one thanking you. Thank you for your help." Primeval Yuan faintly smiled. It had to be said that this was the most discerning investment he had ever made in his life. He had won the bet. But this wasn't the important point. The important point was that the ancient race had now become friends with Yi Xian. Becoming friends with Yi Xian was the same as becoming friends with a massive and terrifying influence. This lucky chance was what he valued the most. After becoming friends with such a terrifying influence, who would dare cause trouble for the primal god race in the future? This was simply a huge profit. It wasn't long before they arrived at the primeval god domain under Primeval Yuan's lead. This was the former home of the primeval god clan, and a terrifying aura enveloped everyone as soon as they entered the primeval god domain. Wang Lin frowned. At this time, old June suddenly said, "Matriarch, be careful. There are some Sara walkers here." Wang Lin nodded, "It's fine. It's just trash." Old June. On the side, an old man said, "Matriarch, do we need to mobilize the Yang family army?" "The Yang family army?" Yi Xian was startled. Then he looked at Dong Linen and softly said, "What is the Yang family army?" Nan Linen smiled. "It was established by me and your Auntie Sue, specifically to protect the Yang clan." Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, "Is he very strong?" Dong Linan blinked his eyes. "Just one person is enough to sweep away all the experts here." Yi Xian was speechless. Yi Xian was speechless. His originally firm heart of cultivation began to waver again. Should he go back and inherit the family property? 7017K. Chapter 2269. It had to be said that even he did not know how terrifying the power of the Yang family was. What was shown now was just the tip of the iceberg. At this moment, a shadow suddenly appeared in front of Dong Linen and the others. The illusory figure glanced coldly at the distant primordial Yuan. "Instead of dragging out an ignoble existence, why did you come back?" Primeval Yuan glanced at the phantom, and then he said, "Manton, long time no see." The illusory figure called Mantion suddenly waved his right hand, and a terrifying force swept towards immemorial Yuan. Old Master Jun suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Boom! That terrifying power was directly torn apart. Mantion looked at old Jun and narrowed his eyes. "Who are you?" Dong Linen glanced at Mantion and said, "The primal god race wants to return to Primeval City. Do you have any objections?" Mantion was so angry that he laughed. "You think I'll go back just because you say so?" Southeast suddenly shouted, "Kill!" Old Man June suddenly rushed out. A wisp of sword light suddenly tore through the sky. Rumble! Mantion was forced back several tens of thousands of feet by the sword. Elder June was about to attack again when an old man suddenly appeared here, and the old man said, "Wait." Dong Linen waved his right hand lightly and Senior June retreated to the side. The old man glanced towards the south, and then he said, "My Manhuang clan of gods is willing to withdraw from Primeval City." In the distance, Mantion angrily said, "Patriarch." The old man coldly looked at Mantion. "Shut up." Mantion's heart trembled, and he didn't dare to speak again. He knew that the patriarch was angry. Dong Linen looked at the old man and didn't say anything. He was hesitating. The old man had obviously discerned Southeast's intentions, and he hurriedly said, "Your Excellency, my barbaric divine clan will withdraw from the Primeval City from now on, and will never return to the Primeval City again. If we violate this oath, then my barbaric divine clan will vanish from this world." East Linen was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I will allow you to leave, but you must remember your words. If your wild god race dares to cause trouble for the primal god race again, I will make sure you all completely disappear from this world." The old man quickly said, "I understand." Dong Linen waved his hand, "Let's go." The old man quickly turned around and left. Not long after, countless experts from the desolate lands of God Clan left the Primeval City. Their speed was extremely fast, and in a short time, the entire Primeval City became an empty city. Primeval Yuan brought a group of primal god race powerhouses to the city gates. As he looked at the walls in front of him, his eyes were blank. How many years has it been? On the battlefield, the primal god race powerhouses found it hard to contain their excitement. He was finally back. Seeming to have thought of something, Primeval Yuan turned to look at Yi Xian in the distance. He quickly walked up to Yi Xian and bowed deeply. "Thank you, young Master Yi." Yi Xian asked, "Then who is the god tribe of the wilderness?" Primeval Yuan bitterly smiled. "They were mortal enemies of our primal god race. Afterwards, they grew stronger and stronger, thus we were suppressed. Afterwards, we escaped. At this point, he sighed softly, and his tone was filled with complicated emotions. Yi Xian nodded. I don't think they will dare to cause trouble for you anymore. Primeval Yuan smiled and said, I know. That man Tian didn't have a brain, so he couldn't clearly see the situation. But he knew that the patriarch of the wilderness god race could. This group of people in front of him was absolutely not someone that the wilderness god race could provoke. Yi Xian suddenly said, Senior, then we will bid our farewells. Primeval Yuan hesitated for a moment and then said, Young Master Yi, take care. Yi Xian nodded. Until we meet again. After speaking, he turned to East Linen and said, Mother, let's go. East Linen nodded. Soon everyone left. Primeval Yuan looked into the distant horizon and softly said, How terrifying. On another side, after the wilderness god race patriarch led the group of wilderness god race powerhouses away, some of the wilderness god race powerhouses remained unconvinced. In the starry skies, everyone began to clamor. Shut up. At this time, the wilderness god race patriarch suddenly flew into a rage. Everyone quieted down and looked at the patriarch. The wilderness god race patriarch's complexion was extremely ugly. Do you think I want to leave Primeval City? Don't you see the powerhouses that woman brought? The weakest among them is a time immortal, and there are more than 1,000 of them. The ones leading them are samsara walkers. With such a terrifying force, what can our wilderness god race use to fight against them? In the field, the wilderness god race powerhouses were silent. At this time, an old man suddenly said in a low voice, What force are they? The wilderness god race patriarch shook his head. I don't know. I don't know. This was the most terrifying thing. In the current multiverse, he was very clear about some of the super forces, but he had never seen East Linen and the others. What did this mean? This meant that this was a super force that surpassed their understanding. This was also the reason why he decisively admitted defeat and left Primeval City. At this time, an old man said in a low voice, Patriarch, are we just going to leave like this? The wilderness god race patriarch was silent, his face gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. At this time, an old man suddenly appeared in the field. It was Old June. The wilderness god race patriarch frowned when he saw Old June. The other wilderness god race powerhouses all raised their guard. Old June glanced at the wilderness god race patriarch and said, The matriarch asked me to pass on a message to you. She has no interest in participating in the grudge between you and the primal god race. The reason we are helping the primal god race is because they helped our young master. We are only here to repay a debt of gratitude, that is all. The wilderness god race patriarch said in a low voice, Who are you? Old June said, The Yang clan. The wilderness god race patriarch frowned. The Yang clan? I've never heard of it. Old June nodded. It's normal that you've never heard of it, because we aren't from this universe. As he spoke, he turned and looked around. Is the strongest force in this universe the Fey Celestial race? The wilderness god race patriarch nodded. Yes. Old June had a calm expression. The ancestor of the Fey Celestial race, Fey Celestial, was imprisoned by the Sword Master for several hundred years because of his offensive words. He has only been released now. Hearing this, the wilderness god race patriarch's pupils shrank. You, Old June had a calm expression. Did you see that youth just now? The wilderness god race patriarch nodded. I saw him. Old June said, He is the young master of the Yang clan. He is currently adventuring outside. If he meets you in the future, I hope you can make things easier for him. The wilderness god race patriarch hurriedly said, Of course. Of course. Old June nodded. He opened his palm and a spatial ring slowly floated in front of the wilderness god race patriarch. There is an inheritance within this that will allow you to surpass the samsara walker. The god tribe patriarch of the barbarian wilderness was taken aback. He took the spatial ring and scanned it with his divine sense. In the next moment, his expression changed dramatically. Then he became excited. He hurriedly looked at Senior June and said in a trembling voice, Thank you, thank you. Old June nodded. Farewell. With that, he turned and disappeared into the distant horizon. On the battlefield, the wilderness god race patriarch suddenly laughed like a madman. What a bloody profit! This father of the wilderness god race has earned a bloody profit. The wilderness god race powerhouses were dumbfounded. The god tribe patriarch of the barbarian wilderness suddenly thought of something. He waved his right hand, and Yi Xian's face appeared on the battlefield. He shouted, "Remember this person well. If you meet him in the future, be polite. If this person needs help, do your best to help. Do you hear me?" Everyone. On the other side, in the starry sky, Dong Linen looked at Yi Xian. "Are you really not coming with me?" Yi Xian shook his head. "Not for now. I will find you in the future." After a moment of silence, Dong Linen said, "Okay." As she spoke, she turned to look at Old Man Jun. "How are the three little fellows?" Old Jun nodded. "They are rare geniuses. Now they have become time controllers. If they want to become time immortals, it is up to them. However, for the three of them, becoming time immortals is only a matter of time." Dong Linen nodded. "But..." She looked at Yi Xian. "Then I am leaving." Yi Xian nodded. "Mother, take care." Dong Linen smiled. She tidied up Yi Xian's messy clothes. Yi Xian nodded. "But..." Dong Linen hugged Yi Xian. Then, she took out a spatial ring and quietly placed it in Yi Xian's hand. Then she turned and left. The strong ones bowed slightly to Yi Xian and then turned around to leave. Yi Xian looked at the starry sky in the distance. His right hand gripped the spatial ring tightly. His heart was filled with complicated emotions. Far away in the depths of the starry sky, Dong Linen suddenly stopped. Behind her, the group of super experts suddenly became excited. All of them bowed deeply to the person in front of them, showing extreme respect. Not far away, there stood a man in a green robe. "Sword Master." Dong Linen slowly walked to the man's side. "Why didn't you give it to him yourself?" The man in green laughed. "Is there a difference if I give it to you or me?" Dong Linen rolled her eyes at the man in green. "Of course there is a difference. Also, there is a huge difference." The man in green shook his head and did not speak. Dong Linen sighed. "You father and son," the green-robed man said softly, "Tian Ming, brother Xiao Yao, and I have high hopes for him. We hope that he can reach our level in the future, or even surpass us. In the future, the order of the universe must be controlled by him. Otherwise, Tian Ming and I will not be at ease. The one in the Milky Way has an ambiguous attitude. His intentions are unclear. We dare not gamble." Saying that, he shook his head. His expression was rather complicated. Dong Linen said in a deep voice, "Can't we kill him?" The man in green smiled. "We can. But not now." Dong Linen was puzzled. "Why?" The man in green sighed. "Because, strictly speaking, he is not a bad person." Also, saying that, he shook his head helplessly. "The three of us have jumped out of the circle. But that little guy has not. We still need him." Saying that, he suddenly shook his head and smiled. "Let's not talk about these complicated things. Let's go." Dong Linen suddenly said, "Since you want to train him, why do you still want us to help him?" The man in green rolled his eyes at Dong Linen. "I want to train him, but I don't want to kill him." "But, in your hearts, do you really think that he is not my biological son?" Dong Linen. P.S. When the update is over. Reader, Luan's good brother. When the update is over. Reader, Luan's good brother. When the vote is over. Reader, not a single hair. 7017K. Chapter 2270. After Dong Linen and the rest left, Yi Xian was silent for a long time. At this moment, Shitian, the evil lord, and Tian Qi walked to his side. Shitian said softly, "Brother Yi?" Yi Xian shook his head. "Brother Dao Ling, heh." At this moment, laughter was heard from the side. Yi Xian and the rest were stunned. The next moment, they turned their heads and saw a man standing not far away. When they saw the man, Yi Xian and the rest were stunned. It was Dao Ling. However, Dao Ling was in soul form. Shi Tian was shocked. Brother Dao Ling, didn't you already? Dao Ling laughed heartily. Are you surprised? To be honest, I am surprised too. Shi Tianyao smiled. He walked in front of Dao Ling and gave him a big hug. Dao Ling looked at Yi Xian from afar. Your sister saved me. Yi Xian was stunned. In fact, he had already guessed it. Yi Xian was silent. He understood why Qing didn't respond at that time, and he also understood why Qing only saved Dao Ling afterwards. Yi Xian walked to Dao Ling and patted his shoulder. It's good that you are back. Dao Ling nodded. After dying once, his state of mind was completely different. At this moment, the space-time in the distance suddenly split open. The next moment, a middle-aged man walked out slowly. Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian and the rest. Finally, his eyes fell on Tianqi. When he saw Tianqi, he squinted his eyes. It's really you. Tianqi looked at the middle-aged man and did not speak. The middle-aged man stared at Tianqi. Return to the clan with me. Return to the clan? Yi Xian frowned. Was this a clansman of Tianqi? From afar, Tianqi ignored the middle-aged man because he did not know him. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, You are a clansman of Tianqi? The middle-aged man glanced at Yi Xian. Or you? Yi Xian said, I am Heaven-Forsaken's friend. Friends? The middle-aged man narrowed his eyes. You said you're his friend? Yi Xian nodded. Is there a problem? The middle-aged man laughed and said, No problem. Yi Xian frowned. Are you here to receive Tianqi back to the clan? Return to the clan. The middle-aged man stared blankly for a moment before bursting into laughter. You're right. I'm here to bring him back to the clan. Yi Xian shook his head. He can't go back with you. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. Why? Yi Xian said indifferently, Your killing intent is almost written on your face. The middle-aged man stared at Yi Xian and said with a smile, Interesting. Young man, do you know who is in front of you? Yi Xian shook his head. I don't know. The middle-aged man smiled and asked, Have you heard of the Fei Sky tribe? Yi Xian fell silent. Obviously, Tianqi was from the Fei Sky tribe. The middle-aged man laughed. Looks like you haven't. But that's normal. How could someone like you have heard of the Fei Sky tribe? As soon as he finished speaking, he looked at Tianqi. In the next moment, he suddenly clenched his right fist and punched at Tianqi. A wisp of viciousness flashed through Tianqi's eyes. He was just about to attack when a ray of sword light slashed towards the middle-aged man. Yi Xian had attacked. At this moment, he'd actually attained the time control realm. Bang! As an expanse of sword light erupted, the middle-aged man was blasted over 10 kilometers back. As soon as he stopped moving, his body actually split apart. He was at the time control realm as well. Besides the Yang clan, there were no other powers that could deal with experts at the time immortal level like cabbages. The middle-aged man felt disbelief as he gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's expression was calm. Fuck off. The middle-aged man revealed a ferocious expression. How presumptuous! How dare you speak to me like that? You! Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. The middle-aged man's pupils constricted as he raised his arms to block Yi Xian's attack. Bang! An expanse of sword light exploded apart as the middle-aged man's body was blasted apart. After that, a sword pierced through the center of his forehead. Bang! In an instant, the middle-aged man's soul was completely absorbed. Shi Tian spoke in a low voice. Brother Yi, looks like Tianqi's clan isn't very friendly to him. Yi Xian nodded. I can see that. Shi Tian spoke in a low voice. Brother Yi, we're probably going to have new trouble. Yi Xian turned around to gaze at Tianqi. Do you remember what happened in the clan? Tianqi shook his head. Yi Xian fell silent for a short moment before he said, Cultivate. Our target is the time immortal. The time immortal. Shi Tian and the others nodded. In the previous battle, along with Elder Jun and the others' guidance, they had gained quite a bit. Even now, they still hadn't completely absorbed it. Everyone found a quiet starry sky and cultivated on their own. In the starry sky, Yi Xian looked at the two spatial rings in his hand. One of them contained an immortal meridian treasure. He glanced at it and saw that there were over 4 million immortal meridians. Was it a lot? Actually, it was a lot. This was the entire wealth of an ancient faction. It was unknown how many tens of thousands of years they had saved up to have so many immortal meridians, 4 million immortal meridians, plus the ones east, south, and east had given him. He now had 7 million immortal meridians. It had to be said that this was a huge amount of wealth. In the other spatial ring, there was only a scroll. Yi Xian opened the scroll. The scroll suddenly turned into a sword light and entered the center of his forehead. Bang! Yi Xian's body violently shook as countless pieces of information surged into his mind. The void. If this sword skill is successfully cultivated, it can break through time, it can break through reincarnation, it can break through everything. There was only a simple line of explanation. Yi Xian knew that his father had probably left this for him. The void. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. After a long time, he opened his palm and a sword condensed in his hand. What was the void? The void was an absolute existence that transcended space-time and didn't have any meaning or attribute outside of the beginning of the universe. The void was the source of all things in the universe, the final destination of all things. Time was the void. Reincarnation was the void. Fate was the void. A sword slashed the void, slashing the essence of all things in the universe. In the battlefield, Yi Xian slightly closed his eyes and the sword in his hand trembled slightly. 3 days later, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes and slashed with his sword. With this slash, the river of time in front of him was directly torn apart. Not only that, but he was shocked to find that the power of time directly turned into nothingness when it touched his sword. The bane of the power of time? Yi Xian was stunned. Moreover, Yi Xian noticed that there seemed to be some other power that had been destroyed by his sword as well. However, he didn't know what exactly it was. According to his guess, it should be a power that surpassed the power of time. Meanwhile, Dao Ling appeared by Yi Xian's side. At this moment, his body had completely recovered. Dao Ling smiled. Your strength has improved again. Yi Xian nodded. Even though he wasn't a time immortal yet, he didn't feel any pressure when facing a time immortal with the sword technique his father had left him. After all, he'd fused with the river of time and had a sword technique that specifically countered the power of time. So, a time immortal couldn't pose a threat to him. However, a powerhouse at the level of Old June was still a great threat to him. Reincarnation Walker. Yi Xian fell into deep thought. Meanwhile, Dao Ling suddenly said, What do you plan to do next? Yi Xian looked at Dao Ling. What about all of you? Dao Ling fell silent for a moment before he said, We want to give it a try. Give it a try. After coming out, they realized that the universe was really big and they were very small. If they stayed in the same place and didn't go out to explore, then their achievements would probably stop at the time immortal level. And their goal was not just to become a time immortal. Yi Xian looked at Shitian and Xianxia who were walking towards them from afar. Both of them nodded slightly. Obviously, everyone wanted to go out and explore. Yi Xian suddenly said, Do you know the owner of the Great Path's fate in the Immortal Mausoleum? Xianxia said in a deep voice, I know Daoist a little bit. Everyone looked at Xianxia. Xianxia said in a deep voice, His name is Xian Feng, the most monstrous genius in the history of the Immortal Mausoleum. His current realm should be the Time Immortal. During the previous battle, several super experts from the Immortal Mausoleum escorted him out. After saying that, he paused for a moment and continued, He should come to find us. Dao Ling smiled, Then let's wait for him. Shitian suddenly said, We still have to face another problem, Heaven's abandonment. Heaven's abandonment. They looked at Heaven's abandonment. That middle-aged man's attitude had already let them know that the heavenly demon tribe had deep enmity towards Heaven's abandonment. Yi Xian walked in front of Heaven's abandonment. He looked at Heaven's abandonment. Do you want to go back to your family? Heaven's abandonment was silent. Yi Xian smiled. If you want to go back, we can accompany you. Heaven's abandonment was silent for a long time. He said, "Father wants me to go back." Yi Xian asked, "Did he say what he wants you to do?" Heaven's abandonment shook his head. "He wants me to become very, very powerful before going back." Hearing this, Yi Xian and the others looked at each other. It was obvious that Heaven's abandonment of the heavenly demon tribe was not a normal departure. There was probably a grudge between them. Shitian looked at Yi Xian. "Then don't go back for now." Yi Xian nodded. "Then don't go back for now. When we become time immortals, we will go back with you. If you have relatives there, you can meet them. If the heavenly demon tribe can't accept you, then you can come with us. We brothers will take you to roam around." Heaven's abandonment nodded. "All right." Yi Xian smiled. When he was about to speak, he suddenly turned his head and looked into the depths of the starry sky. In the depths of the distant starry sky, a terrifying aura swept over. "Time immortal." Yi Xian frowned. At this time, the space-time in front of Yi Xian's group was torn apart. Then an old man slowly walked out. After the old man walked out, his eyes fell on Heaven's abandonment. When he saw Heaven's abandonment, his eyes flashed with savagery. "It's really you, you bastard." Then he turned to Yi Xian. "You killed a monster of my heavenly demon tribe." Yi Xian nodded. The old man squinted. "Then are you prepared to be slaughtered?" Yi Xian. Chapter 2271. Slaughter the entire clan. Dao Ling and the others had strange expressions on their faces. They might have a chance to slaughter Yi Xian, but to slaughter Yi Xian's entire clan. This level of difficulty didn't seem to be ordinary. Yi Xian wasn't angry. He was slightly curious. Logically speaking, your heavenly demon tribe should attach great importance to such a monstrous genius like Tianqi. Why do you treat him like an enemy? The old man chuckled. "Does that have anything to do with you?" Yi Xian nodded. "Of course. Because he's my friend." "Friend?" The old man laughed with ridicule and said, "You're really interesting. You actually became friends with a bastard." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Why do you sound so superior?" The old man stared at Yi Xian. "Because I never thought that you were qualified to talk to me." Yi Xian shook his head. "Brothers, kill him." As soon as he finished speaking, he charged forward. A blood-red ray of light tore through the sky. At the instant that Yi Xian vanished, Dao Ling and the others charged forward as well. They attacked together. A wisp of disdain arose on the corners of the old man's mouth when he saw Yi Xian and the others attack. "You're not even a time immortal, yet you dare." At this point, he seemed to have noticed something, and his pupils constricted. The disdain in his eyes instantly vanished and was replaced by seriousness. He didn't dare act carelessly again. He suddenly leaped up and slapped his palm down. Rumble! A strand of terrifying energy swept out from his palm. In an instant, the entire starry sky was obliterated. Bang! Yi Xian and the others were blasted back while the old man was pushed back repeatedly. When the old man stopped, he looked up at Yi Xian and the others, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. He hadn't expected that these 5 people would be so terrifying even though they weren't time immortals. They were simply monstrous. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Kill." As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot. A ray of sword light suddenly slashed in front of the old man. The old man's eyes narrowed slightly while a hint of ruthlessness flashed through them. In the next moment, he charged forward and blasted his fist forward. Rumble! With this punch, a terrifying power of time suddenly swept out from his fist. At this moment, Yi Xian, who was in the lead, slowly closed his eyes. Cleave the void. As soon as he finished speaking, a sword howl suddenly resounded. The moment Yi Xian swung his sword, the old man's pupils suddenly shrank to the size of needles, and a sense of panic suddenly spread from the depths of his heart. Danger! This was what he was feeling at the moment. At this moment, it was too late for him to stop. Rumble! An explosion suddenly resounded, and then the terrifying energy of time in front of the old man exploded apart. A moment later, the old man was blasted over 100 kilometers away. As soon as he stopped, his body exploded, and a sword suddenly pierced through the space between his eyebrows. Boom! Under the astonished gazes of Dao Ling and the others, the old man's soul became illusory. At this moment, all of them were stunned, including Yi Xian himself, because this was the first time he'd executed the void, and he hadn't expected that it would be so terrifying. What the hell? Even a time immortal wasn't able to block this sword? In the distance, the old man whose soul was gradually disappearing looked at Yi Xian in the distance, his face full of disbelief. What is this? Yi Xian glanced at the old man. The void. It can destroy everything in the world. The old man's voice trembled. How is that possible? Yi Xian's expression was calm. Have a safe journey. As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and a ray of sword light flew out from it. In the next moment, the old man's soul was obliterated. It was gone. Next to him, Dao Ling and others were looking at Yi Xian. Yi Xian blinked. Why are all of you looking at me? Dao Ling stared at Yi Xian. That attack just now, what was it? Yi Xian smiled. The void. Dao Ling frowned. I don't think I've seen you execute it before. Yi Xian smiled. I just comprehended it. After saying that, he turned and left. At the side, Xianxia said softly, so powerful. Dao Ling looked at Xianxia. You believe him? Xianxia nodded honestly. Of course. Dao Ling shook his head. You are too young. Xianxia. On the other side, Yi Xian was very excited at this moment. He didn't expect the power of the void to be so terrifying. It could instantly kill a time immortal? How terrifying! Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes, and he began to study the void. Previously he had only learned the void, but he didn't study it in depth. Therefore, his mastery of this sword was not high. But now, after witnessing the terror of this sword, he decided to study it in depth, and unleash the power of this sword to the fullest. Dao Ling and the others were also training crazily. Seeing Yi Xian kill a time immortal with one sword attack, they had to admit that they were a little shocked. Although they were good brothers, they still had the heart to be stronger. Training. Immortal Mausoleum. The Immortal Mausoleum was now in ruins, and almost all the experts inside had been killed. The once prosperous Immortal Mausoleum now looked extremely desolate. A young man stood in front of the Immortal Mausoleum, and he looked into the distance, not saying a word. Behind the young man stood an old man. At this moment, the old man suddenly said softly, Xianfeng, we should go. Xianfeng. This person was the most monstrous genius in the history of the Immortal Mausoleum, and also a person who possessed the fate of the great Tao. Xianfeng looked into the distance, not saying a word. The old man looked around warily and then said, we really should go. Xianfeng suddenly said, did you find out about the Yang clan? The old man shook his head and was slightly helpless. That power seemed to have appeared out of thin air, and there's no information about it at all. All I know is that Yi Xian is the young master of the Yang clan. He hesitated for a moment as he spoke, and then he said, I've investigated the ins and outs of the matter. Sage Shu and the others wanted to get on your good side, so they went to look for Yi Xian's group on their own. They intended to kill them and seize the fate of the great Tao for you. But I never expected the outcome to be like this. Xianfeng's face instantly turned cold when he heard this. The old man sighed softly. They did it out of good intentions. Of course, it's meaningless to talk about all of that now. As he spoke, he gazed at Xianfeng. Xianfeng, I know you want to take revenge, but the strength of this clan is extraordinary. It's impossible for you to resist them with your current strength. What you need to do now is to hide yourself and wait for the right opportunity to deal them a lethal blow. Xianfeng remained expressionless. There's no need to wait for the future. The opportunity is now. The old man frowned slightly. What do you mean? Xianfeng's expression was icy cold. I don't know what the Yang clan is, but I know who that young man by Yi Xian's side is. He's probably the most outstanding genius of the heavenly demon clan, Tian Yao. He was born with the bloodline of the demon god, but his bloodline was stripped away for some unknown reason. Since then he's vanished completely from the heavenly demon clan. Yet now, he's actually reappeared, and he's even by Yi Xian's side. Do you think the heavenly demon clan will let Yi Xian go? As he spoke, he slowly closed his eyes. Let them fight to the death. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Not long after they left, an old man and a middle-aged man suddenly appeared here. The old man was Elder June. The middle-aged man glanced at Elder June and said, Elder June, why didn't you allow me to kill him and eliminate future troubles? Elder June chuckled. Do you think he can threaten the young master? The middle-aged man shook his head. I just think that we should eliminate him by the roots. Elder June spoke softly. Don't worry. He can't win against the young master. The middle-aged man nodded slightly. Right? Who would dare to touch the young master while the Yang clan is around? Elder June suddenly said, Do you think that the young master's greatest backer is the Yang clan? The middle-aged man gazed at Elder June, and Elder June spoke softly, The young master's greatest backer is that woman. The Wildlands Divine Clan. The patriarch of the Wildlands Divine Clan, Man Ming, was in closed-door cultivation. He was a reincarnator now, and his objective was to surpass samsara and attain the destiny realm. What was destiny? To escape from destiny and be free from Daoist's interference and transcend everything. It was extremely difficult to accomplish that. How many people dared to say that they were free from Daoist's control now? Daoist was like a blade that hung over the heads of all cultivators. Because no one knew when this blade would descend, and then it would be gone without them even realizing it. How difficult was it to escape the invisible control of destiny? He'd thought that he would never be able to improve any further in his lifetime, but he hadn't imagined that an enormous fortuitous encounter would suddenly fall into his lap. An inheritance. Every time he thought of this, Man Ming couldn't help but laugh loudly. What a lucky bastard. One day, an old man suddenly strode to the room where Man Ming was in closed-door cultivation. He bowed slightly. Patriarch. A moment later, Man Ming's displeased voice came from the room. Didn't I tell you not to disturb me no matter what? The old man hurriedly said, It's about young Master Yi. The door suddenly opened, and Man Ming walked out. He looked at the old man in front of him. What's wrong with young Master Yi? The old man said in a low voice, Patriarch, I received news that the Monster Sky Clan wants to target young Master Yi. Man Ming frowned. Target young Master Yi? The old man nodded. Yes. I heard that their abandoned son is with young Master Yi. You know about the monster god's bloodline, and now, the young man who was abandoned by the Heavenly Monster Clan has become young Master Yi's good brother. But the Heavenly Monster Clan can't tolerate him. Man Ming said in a low voice, They want to target young Master Yi? The old man nodded. That's the news I received. Moreover, there are demons in their clan who want to destroy young Master Yi's entire clan. Young clan. Man Ming was stunned. Then, he said softly, How much wine did they drink? If they had even a single peanut, they wouldn't have ended up like this. P.S. School ends today. Go home and write properly. Then explode. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.